Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey, welcome back to Fandom Power. Fandom Power presents the Fandalorian, and today it's Chapter 14. Chapter 14. Once again, I'm joined here in studio by my recording partner, engineer / editor / the man who keeps me from losing my mind, Andy.
Hello.
And our good friend of the show out in Halifax, who has been nonstop chat since yesterday because there's so much to talk about, Hank McClocklin.
Fingers are sore, brain is active, sir.
Me too. I had a hard time sleeping last night because I just kept theorizing in my head what
I started writing fan fiction at 10:30, and I didn't put my friggin' phone down until I texted you last night and said I gotta go to bed. I kept writing for about an hour after that. Actually.
Yeah.
All my brain is lit.
Me too. So before we get into the episode breakdown, as we like to do here on the show, I just want to put it out there. Does anybody have any initial thoughts they want to share?
They just keep getting better. It's like how I don't understand how they can keep topping themselves.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with you on that. What about you, Andy?
Good.
It just keeps building. Like this one, the only thing I can say bad about it is wasn't enough. Give me more.
Yeah. This song is too short.
Yeah. So, man, I thought about this episode last night a lot, and I went back for a third viewing last night while I was in bed to watch it on my phone because I picked out a lot of the technical stuff on the second time around, but I thought, am I missing any of the emotional beats? So I wanted to make sure that I understood it on the level that I wanted to, and I have to say that I feel like the title of this episode is probably one of the most aptly titled episodes in the whole series. But more on a superficial note, I kind of feel like at least the middle act of the show, real war movie vibe to it, like a Hamburger Hill, but only in this instance, like the Americans are stormtroopers.
It's true. I have notes about them being like where the officer orders them to take the hill.
Yeah, very much so.
Get a vibe like no, get moving, you idiot.
Yeah.
So no, I totally do. But I have to start with the title.
The tragedy.
Immediately, my heart sank. Just the word, and my heart sank. But then I started thinking, where else? Almost immediately before I was even focusing on the episode that was about to begin, my head went to where else have we heard that? And alarm bells went off when I realized it was the tragedy of Darth Plagueis.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
From Revenge of the Sith, and the speech where Palpatine literally, like it's exposition about Plagueis, right?
Right.
But he's literally laying out his entire plan to Anakin.
Yeah.
To influence the midichlorians to create life.
Yes.
And now we see the tragedy of Darth Plagueis. The plan, Grogu is central to the plan.
Yeah, if we didn't...
And so that tragedy title makes it so much
Doesn't it,
heavier.
Though? I think if we didn't have it sort of... It's kind of on the nose where like we automatically assume that he is central to the resurrection of the Emperor, but like that takes it to a whole different level.
A whole different level.
Yeah.
It's like you can't, when you start with something like that, how do you turn that light switch off and not then view that entire episode with that veil dangling in front of you first?
I went into this one blind. I didn't do any of my usual pre-show like, hey, it's like 3:00 in the morning in the UK, so I can start looking for stuff, on the internet. And so I kind of went into it blind. And when I saw the title card come up, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to die.
My heart sank.
Me too.
Me physically, too. Yeah.
All right, let's bust into this one and let's break it down. It's Chapter 14, The Tragedy. This one's written by Jon Favreau, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Yes. And that's
City.
Yeah, so Sin City, Desperado, El Mariachi, and a whole host of other like gritty, I don't even know
Spy Kids 3D.
Yeah. We can forgive that one. What do you
Fantastic
I don't know
movie.
what do you call his style? I mean, I'm not sure what I'd call it, but
he's an action director, but he brings this spaghetti western flair to it.
Yeah,
like, all those movies have a spaghetti western flair. Guys with the hair blowing in the wind and the explosion behind them, walking like, you know. So it shows. It shows in this episode
For sure.
The Grindhouse classic.
Yeah. Grindhouse. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So this time the episode, it's 33 minutes long with the recap, or 32 without. And episode synopsis this time around is: the Mandalorian and the child travel to an ancient site. So I just want to go back to last week's episode, and I think we said that they're not going to get there in a single episode, that there would be some intervention, and like,
right.
Guess we kind of
wrong and right.
We partially flubbed that.
Yeah, I gotta apologize for my emotional outburst at the end of the last episode, where I was convinced that Adelon was Tython and that the Bendu, and I got those two friggin' planets with bees mixed up.
Oh, that's yeah,
that happens, kids.
Bogan and Bogano.
Bogano, yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to Bogano today, because we're gonna talk a little bit about some other elements from that game that I wanna bring in, because I think I'm having a bit of a shift in my predictions. So, but we're gonna get to that later on. So starting out, we have we see the Razor Crest is on approach to Tython, and Mando and Grogu are engaged in what looks to be sort of a repeating of the test from the Jedi episode with the shift knob, which apparently, according to the descriptive audio, is officially the shifter knob.
Yes.
I guess it just happened to nail that one by accident, but yeah. So I really like this scene in the sense that, do you hear the elation in Din Djarin's voice when he finally convinces Grogu to take the knob, and he's like, yes! Like,
well, actually, he utters another one.
Yeah.
Dank Ferrick.
Oh,
in
yeah.
a good way.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm not mad at you, kid. That was awesome.
Yeah, as he drops it, right? Like, oh, you're mad at me. No, I'm not mad at you. And then the whole, we've talked about it before very extensively, about this shift from surrogate protector to father. And I think this episode, for me anyway, solidifies that the transition is now complete. There is no doubt in my mind that this episode, Din Djarin is very much resigned to his role as a father.
Super on purpose at the beginning of the episode too. He laughs for the first time in the episode. 2 seasons. Din Djarin laughs. He says Grogu, and the kid's response makes him giggle.
Absolutely.
He's found his stride now, so that it gives so much weight to what happens at the end.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, in this scene, he goes from that happy stride to, you can hear him emotionally breaking. Yeah,
I really picked up on that too.
Like that line where he says, you have to agree to go with them if,
that's
you
right,
have to
yeah.
agree. So kid, you got to make the choice to go with them. But he doesn't say it, but he implies it, or you could stay with me.
Yeah. So he's like, we're going to find that place where you belong. And well, I can't train you. You're too powerful. And I made a point to put it in my notes that, like, this isn't Mando conveying this information to Grogu. This is Mando saying it out loud for his own sake, because he knows, or at least in his mind, he's convinced that by creed, he's got to complete his task, but he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to give him up. So he's saying it to convince himself that it's okay, even though he feels, no, this is not okay. This is not what I want.
It's true. I absolutely agree with you.
And in a way, he's putting it on the child now. Like, okay, I'm going to complete mine, so I'm good with my creed.
Yeah.
And it's on you to decide where you want to go.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so it's a very quick intro, and then we get a rolling of the title cards. And the next scene, we have this. I meant to look it up, and I didn't look it up. What's that thing in the gallery episode? The big convex screen that they're using on the stage. Do you remember what they call that?
I don't remember the name of the thing, but yeah, I know exactly
so
what you're talking about.
It's clear to me.
Filming technique.
Yeah, it's clear to me that they're using it in this scene where the whole the landing sequence, it's in camera, and they're filming it like through the windows, and the whole landing approach, it just looks so real.
Oh yeah.
They come into Tython, and Tython, as we see it, looks like this terrestrial kind of verdant world, and I kind of equated it to, it looks a lot like New Zealand, for the scenes that they used for Rohan in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Sure.
It looks very much like that, kind of rocky and craggy. But we see the large hilltop, and there's a stone feature at the top of the hill, like a Stonehenge like thing. And we can safely assume that this is probably the feature that Ahsoka had mentioned. And the Mandalorian goes as far as to say, "There's the magic rock."
6 stones, all equidistant, sort of. About a 30-degree angle towards the inside. Yeah. And like a half, sort of a ball, but buried in, and it looks like there's like seating around it in a clearing, like a circle, yeah. Maybe 2 steps down and 2 seats down. It's very cool looking.
It's not hard to imagine this is some sort of gathering place or ritual place or some other, like I kind of thought we were going to get like a temple, like we saw on Octu, where there was like a physical structure, like a building, and maybe there is somewhere in the hill, but for purposes of this episode, I don't think it really
use the Force to open these things. Like
exactly.
But it ages it well, because as we travel through these different temples, they get less and less sort of structure to them, and more
decayed,
like, Neolithic type stuff. That gives them, they get going further and further back.
Yeah, it really does. There's a great little line about not being able to land, and he says, "We're going to have to go the last stretch with the windows down."
Fantastic.
And oh my God, there's this like the sheer glee from Grogu as they go whizzing by on Mando's jetpack, and he's just like, "Eee!"
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I was thinking, get that kid some goggles.
Landing on top of the hillside, we can see that at the center of the henge, there's this hemispherical stone, and it's covered it's got a ring of glyphs inscribed on it. And I tried to look at the glyphs, but I couldn't make anything out from them. To me, it doesn't look like a Star Warsy language that we've seen before.
It could be, and I sort of stumbled upon, and I wasn't able to discern anything from it, but I sort of stumbled upon this guy's blog, and it was like This Week in Aurebesh, it's called.
Oh, okay.
And when he was trying to
decipher,
good thanks, some of the words in the Old Republic game.
Gotcha.
He stumbled upon this Jedi code. And the key to it was available to visitors at Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, wow.
On it, and so now you can just Google it. It's a Jedi code language, and some of the glyphs, they're quite worn, but some of them they track, and it's like a pictographic. It's almost like Viking runes.
Yeah.
And they do equate to A, B, C, D, and 0 through 9.
Gotcha.
But I couldn't specifically identify any of them, but that's my leading guess, because that's a pretty new sort of canonization of a language.
Yeah.
And I know that Disney is really pumping Galaxy's Edge there. So.
I know that yes, absolutely they are. As we've said before, like, it's funny how we do our show, we do it the day after all the other media outlets that are out there are scrambling to be first to the market, and we kind of like we do our show a day later, and we've remarked how it's kind of funny that these other outlets, what we would put out in the course of a 2-hour episode, they're putting it all out in small snippets throughout the week.
Right.
And I really like that aspect of our show, that we kind of give you an all-in-one dump. But I feel like there's a good chance that later on this week, somebody will come up with, some semblance of maybe what those glyphs represent, and we may get a deeper insight into that.
I always do feel like I'm trying to budget my time when I get into analyzing the shows the way I do. Especially knowing that we have a sort of a go time the next day.
Yeah.
So I mean, even today I was like 11:45 my time, still writing the last of my notes.
Yeah.
So I do try to allot time. Like I literally spent 2 hours on the Mandoa in the chain code hologram that's coming up, and I was like, wait a minute, I could have watched the episode 4 more times.
It's super helpful. It's super helpful that there's 3 of us, because I know like we've all sort of taken our turn at like, okay, who's got the Aurebesh this week? And it's like, oh, I've got this part. Oh, I've got that part. Okay, great. We'll pull it all together and we'll hammer it out. So
my wife was instrumental in the Mandoa this week, actually.
Oh, that's great. Props to Lauren. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we land on top of the feature, and there's this line like, "Does this look Jedi to you?" Which is, I'm laughing. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, it's complete rhetoric, right? Like, does this look Jedi to you?
He doesn't really know what he's talking about.
No, right? He's just he's literally winging it as he's kind of going, well, this is the seeing stone. Are you seeing anything?
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're supposed to see.
Yeah, exactly. And I like this part too, because I mean, if you're a bounty hunter with access to, technology, and that's your skill set, then he, very much falls back onto his own stuff. And he goes back to his enhanced imagery on his helmet and starts looking for, clues on the seeing stone through what I guess they officially call it Mandovision.
I was just going to say, I friggin' love the fact that it's called Mandovision in the descriptive audio.
Yeah, I found that to be hilarious. Actually, this episode, of all of the episodes, we've talked about it a little bit before about descriptive audio lady, whoever you are.
Yes.
First of all, we love your readings because they're awesome.
Amazing.
But I did not laugh at the descriptive audio more than I did in this episode.
It's true. It's true. There's little tiny guys. You got to listen to it. There's so much little exposition, and she reads it. It's almost deadpan. It's fantastic. Actually,
I feel like this is the same thing when authors go out and write these novelizations of the film novels, is that they have access to scripts that we don't have, and that maybe at the time, because it's a multimedia thing, tie-in, that these books are maybe written concurrently as the film is being developed. So sometimes what comes out in the novelization doesn't line up with what the finished product is on screen, and so to me that just gives it a whole other depth, right?
Now, the best example for me of that is the cover to the Star Wars Marvel comic #1, which is the first chapter of A New Hope, that was released like 3 months before the movie. And on the cover, Darth Vader is green.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we ended up with on a side note, going back to the toy thing, that's we've talked about it in our big Star Wars episode, but that's how we ended up having a full-size blue Snaggletooth with boots.
Right, or a yellow lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. All these things that people aren't aware of. But yeah, so going back to how it relates to Mandalorian, it's like if you turn on the descriptive audio and you turn on the subtitles, you might as well be reading the episode script yourself, because that's really how it plays out, right? So anyway, after using the Mandovision to try and activate the stone, Mando has this moment of like frustration because he can't find anything, but then we hear this like low rumble, and Mando turns to look, and oh my god, first big reveal of the episode, it's a long panning shot of Slave One, to what I've taken to call it the hero shot.
Oh man, he banks and pulls in, and it sounds like it's got that super familiar bomber warble, like whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah, that was really prevalent in the prequels.
Yes, yeah, they really harped on it. And then you get to fly one in the Battlefront 2 game, and that's all you can hear inside the cockpit is that.
Oh, speaking of the Battlefront games, apparently the little blue butterfly that Grogu's chasing is on Endor in the Battlefront game.
Oh, I have a deeper cut for that one when it comes up. I got a deeper one than that. Yes, you're absolutely correct. And it was in the Ewoks cartoon as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
So that's way deeper than I went this week, so I look forward to that. Yeah, it's the Slave One, and for my sensibilities, it looks no worse for wear than the last time we saw it. In Return of the Jedi?
I think I remember saying, "Does Jabba have a secret hangar?"
Yeah, really, because it looks to be like where the show went out of its way to show this deterioration of Boba's armor, part and parcel maybe to being, subjected to a massive explosion and or the gastric juices of a Sarlacc. The Slave One has not suffered a similar fate and looks to be in great condition. So there's this moment of like, because the theme of the show has this recurrence of like bounty hunters showing up when you least expect it, Mando reacts exactly as you would expect him to, and it's like, we got to hurry up, kid. We got to go. We don't have time for this. And
Grogu has turned it on.
Oh, you know what? I missed an entire point. Yeah, I did. Time's up. We got to go. By this point, after the big hero shot, he's turned back to the Seeing Stone, and now we see Grogu in a very classic meditative posture, complete with the thumb and forefinger pinched on his lap in this meditative trance, and there's this swirling column of what I can only describe as force energy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't realize we were at the butterfly just before that.
Yeah, that's right.
Just before that, you're absolutely right, Andy. The butterfly flies in. It's a little blue butterfly.
And he's like,
for me, I don't know if you guys follow the comics, and I follow the comics pretty hard, but when Darth Vader is meditating, he envisions himself as a writhing black mass of black and red worms. His eyes are glowing red. But he still has his limbs while he's meditating. He's in this dark, stormy, there's lightning and stuff happening in this other realm where he meditates. But his legs and arms are still blue with the light side of the Force, if you will.
Okay.
And he's constantly being pestered by little blue butterflies.
Oh, wow.
And they're the last vestiges of Anakin Skywalker.
Right.
And for me, Grogu sitting on that stone and reaching out through the Force.
Yeah.
And those little blue butterflies, I mean, we might get a Hayden Christensen Force Ghost.
I never would have got to that in a million years.
Super indicative.
Yeah. Like that is...
These are almost Anakin's owl, like Ahsoka's owl.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and I just sent a screenshot to you now, but I'll send you the whole little meditation scene after the show. I super feel very strongly that that's a huge connection to Anakin right there.
Is there...
If not just immediately the light side of the Force.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, because as you're saying this, I'm kind of going back to Padme's funeral. Was there butterflies floating around in her funeral?
I believe you're correct, sir.
Yeah.
Wow, I believe you are correct.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that, but as I'm just going from memory here, I kind of feel like there might have been some butterflies flitting around her procession.
Yeah,
I got to go back and check that out. Okay. Yeah. Damn it, show's over. Got to go home.
Yeah. Well, butterflies, folks.
There's nothing by accident.
Next week, a moth.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go home and I'm going to do a marathon. Right. So now we get to that point where I was errantly talking about before about we have to go, and we have this big, like I said, this column of, I'm calling it force energy because I don't know what else to call it. And Mando is like really, really, like he digs in, like he leans into it, like he is pushing against like a very heavy weight, and he tries to penetrate through the column, and there's no other word for it for me. He's like this, he's repulsed, like there's a flash.
A shockwave sends him backwards.
Yeah. And I mean, he tumbles back.
He's thrown back quite far.
Yeah. And it's funny, because as hard-headed as he is, he doesn't get the message right away.
No.
So he's like, okay, I'll try and buy you some time, but gives him like the please hurry up, hoping that somehow his voice is getting through to Grogu, even though he's clearly like lost in this communion / meditation
and I
broadcast.
think that they do show that it's. Yeah, it's a good word, Andy. That's what he's
absolutely.
doing.
I mean, the force energy is directed, up.
Out.
Yeah.
I do think that they show that Grogu can hear him because they were inside the force beacon.
Oh yeah.
And you can hear the muffled voice.
Yeah,
so
like someone talking to you through the window.
While Grogu can hear him, there's not a lot he can do about it right now.
Right, that's right. So stepping over to the edge of the hill, he looks over the side and back to the Mando vision, and he sees a lone figure make his way out of the slave one. And of course we have the presumption of who it is, and Mando ends up kind of making his way down the hillside, bouncing from rock to rock, using kind of
you get to see that beacon now in the background, and it's right up into space.
Yeah,
way up. And I wish we had seen it one time from space to see how far it goes.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this for a second, because we see the hill plays a huge part as a set piece in the episode, and we have a lot of movement both up and down. to me, there's some inconsistencies with the height of the hill and the amount of travel time people are taking to move between places.
It's true. They try to run it a few times, and it seems to go slower than when they walk it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you're saying, just hit me right now. Now you're saying if we could have seen it from space.
Yeah.
How Death Star-ish would it have looked with all those beams, like the
oh,
6 monoliths
interesting. Yeah.
focusing on the beam and then, shot out.
That's interesting. In a weird kind of way.
Like a light side, type beam.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it reminds me of the 86 Transformer movie when Unicron opens his maw and has that where he sends a pulse out. It looks kind of like that. And that's an episode for another time. But makes his way down the hillside and ducks in behind a rock. And it's really cool because there's this burst of like blaster fire that forces him into cover. And at first I'm thinking like, oh, someone's got a repeating blaster. It's like automatic fire. And then you hear that voice and it's Tamura Morrison. I've been tracking you, Mandalorian.
Oh, it's so good. And
it's the first spoken words from Boba Fett in 40 years. 37 if you actually count his scream in Return of the Jedi.
It's true. It's very true.
I thought that was a little bit of a fun piece I'd throw in, but yeah.
None of my employees are even that old.
Yeah, so first spoken dialogue in 40 years. Wow. We look up and we see that it's the guy we assume to be Boba Fett that we saw back in the Marshal, still wearing his desert gear / Jedi robes.
He still looks amazing.
Yeah, complete with the crossed slug thrower rifle and gaffy stick. Come to find out that I'd always just called it slug thrower rifle. I think that goes back to the role-playing game where it's like low-tech weapon. It's essentially modern 20th century firearms, like bullets and black powder. Right. But the descriptive audio calls it a Tusken cycler rifle.
Right, yes.
So that's a new one for me. So then there's some exposition and dialogue here about, are you a Jedi or are you after the child? And he's very much on the nose. I'm here for the armor. And Mando's been in this situation before where it's like, oh, fuck, everybody wants my armor for Christ's sakes. And he's like, if you want my armor, you'll have to peel it off my dead body. But Boba's like, I don't want your armor. I want my armor that you got from Cobb Vanth back on Tatooine, and it belongs to me. And then again, we talked about this in the episode of the Jedi episode about the questions. You Mandalorian?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It's like, are you Mandalorian? And
he says the line.
Like, did you take the creed? He's like, I swear allegiance to no one.
I'm a simple man, like my father before me.
Which is kind of a mashup. I'm a simple man making my way through the galaxy.
That's right.
Django.
Yeah.
And like my father before me is Luke.
I was over the moon when he dropped that. I was just like, yes.
I watched this episode 3 times yesterday, and in some ways I found that single line of dialogue to be the most interesting element of the whole show. And I kind of want to take a few minutes and I want to go meta, and I want to kind of talk about this on a broader sense. And I just want to talk about it in context of, the Disney era of Star Wars, particularly the sequels. There's a term that they've come around with where when referring to the original trilogy characters, they've referred to them as legacy characters.
It's true.
Right? And I'd like to just go out on a limb, and I want to propose, and in fact, I'm going to call it here. I am officially coining a new term, and I'm going to call it legacy dialogue or legacy lines. I think this show is really showing us something. Like, Star Wars has this habit of recycling dialogue, right? And it's usually, like, how many times have we heard
I've got
somebody,
a bad feeling about
right?
this.
And that's the one I go to automatically. We've heard variations of I got a bad feeling about this 1 million times from so many different characters.
I believe it's in every movie. I believe it's in all 11 movies because Solo has the opposite take on it.
Yeah.
Which is really refreshing, actually. Great choice by Ron Howard. I got a good feeling about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you automatically, and he does another one actually when he tells Lando, I hate you, and he says, I know. It's also
the
line. But yeah, no, you're right. Legacy lines.
Legacy lines or legacy dialogue, I'm calling them.
Yeah.
And I want to go a little further with that because on that note, the one legacy line that we have not heard is a variation of I've got a bad feeling about this.
That's very true.
And nor should we, because the legacy characters that we associate those lines with have not appeared in this. So there'd be no reason for them to say it. But I want to propose something here. And I want to go back to some of the things that Qui-Gon Jinn had passed on to Obi-Wan Kenobi about be mindful of the living force.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wonder, because this is the first time we've had a mashup of dialogue spoken by two different characters that are both callbacks, but they're merged together. So are these, from a creative standpoint, whether it's Favreau or Filoni, and I would heavily lean onto Filoni given his understanding of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Is this his way of telling us, the viewer, that Star Wars is kind of cyclical and that the living force plays a role in everybody's life by having these dialogue lines come up over and over again, but again, as we've said, recontextualized or reformatted to have a bit of a different meaning or a new context?
It's a great thought, especially in terms of the fact that, and Lucas used to harp on this all the time, especially was in control and especially in defense of the prequels.
Yep.
That Star Wars was always meant to be like rhyming stanzas, akin more to like Greek poetry or legends or Shakespearean, crazy big Shakespearean overtures, where things would have rhyming stanzas. And that's the reason that you get like inverted lightsaber poses, the reason you get dialogue similarity, the reason you get like wipes. Have you ever seen that video, the YouTube video? I'm probably the only human being that watched it, but all 9 Star Wars on the screen at the same time.
Oh, no, I did not.
So I watched it all.
Wow, it
was like 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy the timing in the first 6.
Yeah.
And to watch the lightsaber, like to watch the dramatic beats rise and fall identically. And you begin to go, wow, I don't think he's the hack that some people think he is. I think he's a mad genius.
Yeah.
To watch like at 10:01 in one scene, like a guy pull a blaster in a certain way, at 10:01 in a movie friggin' 40 years later, to have the guy pull the blaster in the same way seems so innocuous. But so I think you've hit upon something here really big, actually.
Yeah. Like, again, I just want to go back and sort of juxtapose like the I got a bad feeling about this. It's played for comedy, but all of these, what I'm now calling legacy lines, they've really gone out of their way to make sure that these lines count and they mean something more than just, oh, it's just a simple callback to this guy said this before. There's so much more behind it. And this line, like the whole Django Luke mashup here just has this, it has a much deeper meaning to me. And although I can't say one way or the other that this is what they're doing, I have a feeling. And, again, maybe that's the force working.
And for me, it's not quite a legacy line, but it's based on that legacy line.
Yeah.
Later on in the episode, when we dip deeper into the EU with the chain code hollow, I really get a sense of what you're talking about, because they use something from the past and it revolves around that line that you're talking about, and to legitimize something thematic from the last movie, which was the Rise of Skywalkers.
Right. But I mean, like Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan said right from the beginning, it surrounds and binds us all, and there's talk about controlling it, and sometimes it controls you. And so again, this is that's that aspect of Qui-Gon, be mindful of the living force. That the living force has its own will, and things can sometimes happen for reasons that we don't understand. And I feel like this is where a lot of these legacy lines are coming from, that this is a visual or audio representation of the living force.
It's true too. Even Obi-Wan is like Master Yoda says, I should be mindful of the living force. And Qui-Gon is, not at the expense of the moment.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's very true. Like, man, yeah, that's a really good call, actually.
I didn't mean to go so deep so soon, but I mean, it hit me.
Yeah.
It hit me on my. Well, actually, it hit me on the. It was bugging me the first time that, like, for the first viewing, and then my second viewing, as I'm crafting my notes, I'm like, there's more going on here, and it just made me think back to how many previous episodes of The Mandalorian have we mentioned, oh, this is a line spoken by.
Certainly.
And I'm
certainly in the Ahsoka episode, she delivers 2 or 3 Yoda lines.
Yeah.
Broken up over different pieces of dialogue, certainly.
Right.
And you have the press release and the Vanity Fair article with
Filoni
literally stating that at this point in her life, she's a master now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes sense that she's dropping Yoda-style wisdom.
Well, that's my first big dive on the episode that I thought was really cool, and I hope that it challenges some of your thoughts as a listener and as a Star Wars fan out there.
Like my father before me.
Yeah. So Boba counters that it belonged to his father, and it now belongs to him. Each man being firm in their position essentially brings that conversation to a bit of a
stalemate.
A stalemate. Yeah, exactly.
Until he plays his ace.
Well, yeah, Mando tries to break it with what's to stop me from, like, smoldering you right here, as he's drawn down on him. I mean, it's a standoff. Mm-hmm. And we get our next little bit of, like, uh-oh. And Boba says, well, I've got a sharpshooter up on that ridge that's got a scope locked down on you and, would shoot before my body hits the ground. And,
doesn't say locked on you, though.
No, he doesn't. And so Mando's like...
It just says it's locked.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm the one that's wearing Beskar, so as soon as I see that muzzle flash, you'll both be dead. And this is where it gets really interesting, because he says something to the effect of, no, she is aimed at your little friend, and oh my God, if she doesn't turn out to be Fennec Shand...
Certainly.
Who... is very much alive and well despite having been left for dead on Tatooine. And
this whole scene for me was like a chess match. And if you guys have ever played chess, they're actually just like trading back chess pieces there. And Mando wins. Yeah. Mando wins with the whistling birds. He literally he arms the whistling birds and says, This is checkmate. Think, Boba. Think 10 moves down the road.
Yeah.
And Boba then says, and what you do say in chess, if either of you played extensively, when you know you're beat in 10 or 20 moves, you call a draw.
Interesting.
And so that's what Boba does in that moment. He actually says, okay, it's a draw.
Yeah.
Even though Mando is going to win because the whistling birds will kill them both before she gets a shot off.
That's true.
And so that's that quick chess that they play. And I mentioned it before in the battle with Ahsoka, when he fights Ahsoka and they have a chess match.
Yeah.
Mando's deadly at fight chess, at gambling, or whatever it is.
Fight chess. I like that.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do.
Deadly at it. Yes. He actually has the upper hand right there.
I wonder though, like, this is just me, again, this is theorizing. It's like, we see what Mando goes through trying to penetrate that column of energy. And let's say it went the other way and it went south. Do you think that her blaster fire would have gotten through that column of energy?
I had to think, is it the Beskar holding him back?
I don't know.
I just had to think that.
I just think, like if Fennec had have pulled the trigger at Grogu,
he would have made it.
Do you think that the blaster fire would have penetrated the?
I think it would have offered him some level of protection.
I think so too.
Like maybe not slow it completely, but slow it enough.
In the Battlefront game, you can certainly interrupt a Force user's abilities. It doesn't necessarily kill them.
Yeah.
But you shoot a Force user in the middle of casting on someone else, if you will, to use the term.
Yep.
It certainly interrupts their ability.
Interesting.
So,
but as you say, like in the chess match, and now we've got the draw per se. It's it's Boba who, like,
I think, in my opinion anyway, I think Boba wins it there, based solely on Mando's transition to father, because he pulls that emotional card and puts the child in danger.
That's true.
And can Mando then gamble on that force field being strong enough to stop that?
That's why I say that Boba in that moment calls the draw, because like it's he knows that like he's dead even if the child dies.
Yeah, if this goes any further, it's only going to end in bloodshed.
Avoiding the checkmate is classic chess.
Right.
Let's play another game.
Yeah. And in this game, it's let's have a chat.
Exactly.
So there's some overtures made about the constellation with everybody laying down their weapons at the same time, which includes, conveniently that includes Mando's jetpack.
I thought that was odd.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I went, that's weird.
Yeah.
It makes sense now. They had to get it off his back.
It makes sense from I need to structure my episode in such a way that Mando just cannot have that conveyance to get him to where he needs to go instantly, that he's got to walk.
But that was a misfire for me based on what we've previously seen, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's got that remote control. So that should have
true,
factored
right?
in.
Like, why he didn't remotely call it back. I don't know.
Go gadget jetpack.
Definitely there were some holes in this episode, like you say, that kind of surround some of the choices. And I don't think they're directing choices. I think they're writing choices, really.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of them. Interesting note, though. Did anybody pick up how much shorter Mando's cloak is now? Presumably from being burned off?
I noticed that a couple episodes ago, but I was sort of shy to say it.
Is that thing getting shorter?
It kind of keeps getting shorter every episode a little bit, I think. We watched it. Took some screenshots. It might be getting shorter every episode.
Not that you can use the word Star Wars and realism in the same sentence, with any credibility, but to me, nice bit of realism, at least having that happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there's no need for bloodshed here, and he orders Fennec Shand to come down and join the conversation, and there's this whole like, oh my God moment where it's like, you've just seen a ghost, and there's an interesting little piece of dialogue from Boba talking about how, she was left for dead on the sands, and as I was. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes, fate steps in and rescues the wretched. I thought that was a pretty cool line. And
get the impression that like he might have jetpacked out of the Sarlacc unconscious, and Jawas just stripped his body and left him there.
I still don't know if that... I don't know. I still think maybe on some level, like, he may have the explosion of the barge may in fact have killed the Sarlacc, allowing him to escape.
It's possible.
I think he may have climbed out under his own power, but was probably, unable to do much for that. Maybe they did scavenge it right off of his body from that point. I don't think anybody pulled him out of the Sarlacc. I think he crawled out and probably
There are several EU versions of it. Actually,
yeah.
Several.
Well, the whole Dengar thing and
the Han Solo one from the Marvel comic is awesome.
Yeah,
he's lost his memory and he's working with Han Solo, and they're on top of a runaway sandcrawler about to go off a cliff when Boba suddenly gets his memory back and goes, Solo? It's fantastic, actually.
Oh, it's hilarious. Interestingly enough, so like we all have this understanding of who Tamira Morrison is, and because we like to do things on the level that we do, and we use descriptive audio and subtitles and all those other resources, to the casual viewer, this is the first time that it has been confirmed without a doubt that this is in fact Boba Fett when Fennec Shand says, and Boba Fett was that fate for me.
Right.
She opens up panel or a piece of fabric on her costume, revealing that most of her lower abdomen is now cybernetically been replaced. And the scene to me was really evocative of the scene in Empire when Luke is getting the 21B droid is kind of poking around at his wrist after his hand surgery.
Folded up.
Yeah. What's really cool about this, and this is another one where talking about, like, is Star Wars in fact cyclical, and do these callbacks have more meaning than just a simple nod to we've seen it before? But there's that scene, they're standing there together beside each other, and yes, Boba Fett is not dressed in his armor, but it's Boba Fett. And you've got Fennec Shand standing there beside him, and to me, I'm like, is this a nod to Jango and Zam? Because there's...
It fully is. Her helmet is fully...
Yeah, so there's very much...
similar.
Yeah.
She gives him cut eye a few times, if you know what that means. She looks suspiciously at Boba a few times through the side of her eye.
Yeah.
Like, even in that piece of dialogue there, she says, like, and now I'm beholden to him, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
She's, like, reluctantly working for Boba.
Oh, of course she is.
Completely. Like, she's like, she rolls her eyes a couple times like when he's like, go do this. And she's like, oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there was no hiding it. Like, it's indentured. I don't know any other way to say that, indentured service,
No,
you saved
exactly.
me, now I owe you.
I saved your gut. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I did get that idea. And it goes back to the legacy dialogue, or the sort of the legacy, the way of writing it. And it's got its own filmmaking language. The property is big enough and has had enough hours of actual screen time pumped into it in all these formats that it's got its own language, its own filmmaking hieroglyphics, if you will. And it's these two guys are amazing at using them strategically and because we catch them immediately, and they've used them to such depth that it's fantastic.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think there's definitely like you say, there is a language there, and we're starting. I think we're really starting to see that play out more and more and more. Just as an aside to that, like I saw an article earlier this morning that basically said, is the Mandalorian doing what the sequel movies should have done? And the author of the article basically goes on to say that they just should have handed the reins over to these two guys a lot sooner, and we wouldn't have had maybe the divisiveness that came with the sequels. And, whether you agree with that or not, it's pretty hard to argue that these two as a creative force working together are not something special.
Oh, seriously special. Yeah. I don't want it to end.
No, me neither.
Yeah. It's they have lightning in a bottle again.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could say that about anything since Empire for me. It's all been good.
Yep.
And I've loved every moment of it.
Yep.
This is some next level. Rebels really got to me too.
I love Rebels. I love Rogue One.
You're right. There are so many.
Yeah.
There are so many high points. Actually,
there really are. I even went back yesterday.
We're in a Star Wars renaissance right now.
I was looking for some filler, to waste some time while my wife was doing some stuff, so she could come and watch the episode with me. And I went back and I watched just a couple of episodes of Clone Wars, and I went back to season 7 to the end of it, and where the season begins to overlap with Order 66.
Yes.
And it's interesting, because this is a Filoni-driven show, the Clone Wars, that is. And in that episode, when Order 66 happens, there's a recreation of the scene between the Jedi Council talking about how if the Chancellor's not going to step down, he's got to be removed from power, removed from office. And the Jedi Council would have to step in as an interim, whatever it is. But Ahsoka walks into the bridge of her Star Destroyer as that's happening, and she's actually now part of that conversation that
she steps
we
in
don't see it.
Ends in the movie.
So she reasserts her position as not being a Jedi, and she says that she has done her duty as a citizen of the Republic. Mm-hmm. And then there's that exposition between the Masters, and then she tries to insert herself back into the conversation, and Mace shuts her down by saying, "Sorry, citizen, but that's for the Council only." And then the holograms, they fade out, except for Yoda. Now, this is going to touch back on what we were talking about in the Jedi, the episode with in the Mandalorian, the Jedi.
Right.
Where we were positing that Ahsoka has returned to the Order in some shape or form. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a line here that kind of supports our theory in that. And because Yoda sticks around after that conversation, he says to her, "More to say, have you, Ahsoka?" And she talks about, what's going on. And Yoda makes a point to say something about, you say this as a citizen, but not as a Jedi. And Ahsoka's answer to Yoda was, "Not yet."
That's right.
Not a no, not yet. Which meant, to me, I interpret as her heart was always there. Yeah. And she was, she still believes, and she still, she was coming back in some way, shape, or form to the
hope, redemption.
Yeah, of course it is. So nice little aside thing anyway.
Perfect.
But so there's a little bit more exposition between Din Djarin, Fennec, and Boba Fett about...
Talks about Jango fighting in the Mandalorian Civil Wars.
He does. Now, are we there yet? I think we've...
Yeah, it's in this point.
Is it right here? Okay,
just before the troop transport flies overhead.
Somehow I've omitted that from my notes. Whether I deleted it by accident, I'm not sure why I did that. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because
It
there's
was given to me by my father Django, by your forebears in exchange. I guarantee the safety of the child.
That's right. Okay, that's exactly where we're at, because that's
Shan
what I've
points
got.
out that the bounty on Grogu has grown significantly, now 10 times the armor of Beskar.
You could buy 10 suits of armor for the price on its head, I think is.
So there's something interesting in that line to me. Is like, why doesn't Boba take the bounty himself then? He could buy it because he's only interested in his own armor. So he's got this sense of morality as well. And I think that this is, I mean, we get a little deeper proof soon, but I think this points strongly to the fact that he is Mandalorian. Like there is part of that code that is like an underlying structure.
Yeah.
To him.
Also,
he
the fact
no creed. I don't swear any allegiance to any.
Group,
I think it's part of his DNA, if you will.
Maybe
we'll get into that soon.
Also, I think on some level, like we kind of speculated that, like, how has the character changed since being swallowed by a Sarlacc and living in the desert, alone for all these years? Is
5 years?
Has he changed? Has he softened in his, like?
Well, the line that he spews in a little bit says a lot to that.
It does. And so then their conversation is broken by the sound of the approaching an approaching ship, and it looks like one of the landing boats from The Force Awakens, actually, just like an older model.
Yeah.
It's like a highly stylized version of the troop transport.
Yeah, like a World War II landing boat with that drop ramp in the front.
That's right.
And it drops down and conveniently parks right beside the Razor Crest.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, realizing that it's now like ejecting squads of stormtroopers, Mando's like the kid, and he basically makes a run for it, not picking up his jetpack. So there's that, like, there's that hole, right?
You get the classic D-Day sort of thing when you're suddenly POV of the stormtroopers coming down the ramp, and a couple of them take shots before they even get off.
Well, here's something I want to mention too. Like, it's no secret when you watch the show. Do you guys watch the recaps? Do you watch them or do you skip them?
No, I watch.
I do too. So the recap is like always related to material that's going to happen in the episode. And so the recap made a point of showing us the Dark Troopers again. And I'm like, when the ramp drops and there's like the fog and the silhouettes, I'm like, Dark Troopers? That's my first thought, right?
It's true, yeah.
And then no, it's plain old Stormy is coming.
It actually, even though it was only a rumor, the recap spoiled the fact that Boba Fett was going to be in the episode. When we saw Fennec Shan's body and the figure kneel down beside her, I went, "Oh, Boba Fett."
Yeah. So we get a bunch of stormtroopers start pouring out of this.
Bunch of different
this
classes,
thing.
though.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Meanwhile, we've still got Grogu now, who's still surrounded by this Force energy column, blissfully unaware of what's going on. And here we go. Here's this. This is sort of the first example of that. Like, there's some inconsistencies with like the size of the hill, because when they're having that conversation, the three of them at the bottom of the hill, and you're looking way back up at the top, you're like, God, that's like hundreds of meters up the hill. But yet Mando is instantly back at the top of the hill in less time than it took the stormtroopers to get off the boat.
Chalk it up to parent adrenaline.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, Granny just lifted a car off him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Time to go, kid. Struggling against the energy field that had repulsed him earlier, Din tries desperately to collect Grogu from the Seeing Stone, but once again he's repulsed. But this time, like,
a bit harder.
It's like it seems like the harder you push against it, the harder it pushes back.
Yes.
And man, does he ever take a fall, like knocked out, like unconscious, like I'm out. Boba and Fennec Shan have actually gone the other way, and they move into cover, both taking up a firing position, and then they look down their respective rifles at the landing craft, and it's squad plus of stormtroopers.
It's like a turkey shoot.
Yeah, really.
First transport is like a turkey shoot.
So it's interesting. Fennec Shan made a point to remind Din earlier in the standoff about how she never misses, and I thought, oh, this is interesting, because she starts unloading, and true to her word, from where I'm sitting, she didn't miss a shot.
Nope.
At least in that initial volley, anyway.
It's true. There's a scene in a few minutes where she's sort of isolated and in the rocks.
Yeah.
Just before she runs from the E-Web, where she shoots at least 6 guys in a row at short range right in the head.
Oh,
all
yeah.
headshots. Every single one.
Yep.
In a row.
What I liked about this part was we've seen the Tusken rifles like before, like in the pod race scene where they're shooting. And I mean, that causes some havoc, but like I'd always written that off as like they had maybe hit a weak point, that pod racers weren't particularly armored. They're,
Sure.
you know, they're sport, recreational vehicles, like a soft skin vehicle, like your car. Mm-hmm. But to see Boba Fett like pull the trigger on that thing and it takes a stormtrooper down, I'm like, that's impressive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and they take them down with full. Like you see the slug.
Yeah,
they take a hit. There's a significant impact. They're thrown back from it.
Always think of like Star Wars as being like this super high tech. Like we've moved beyond that, but like these low tech civilizations would still be using conventional firearms. But it's interesting to see that type of weapon still has a place in the galaxy, right? And it's still formidable.
Well, sure. You remember the second generation of the Robotech armor was porcelain to reflect lasers, but
that's right. Yeah,
with a bat,
shatter.
And it would shatter. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, highly reflective, but no, that's it. Yeah, so I actually wrote Fennec's skills with a blaster are formidable, as her accuracy gives the impression that there are more than just her. More stormtroopers continue to pour from the landing craft, and at this point, Boba and Fennec, they split up. So here comes the line, we talked about this earlier, about taking the hill, where like, just because of her like incredible skill with a rifle, these guys think that they're being overwhelmed, and that one of them actually says there's too much fire. And the squad commander, the captain, the guy with the pauldron, he's like, flank. He's like, flank them, you idiot.
And I wondered, is that guy another cameo appearance? But I couldn't find anything for him.
I didn't pick up on any voices this week, but that maybe just because I wasn't paying attention. And then this gets really, really interesting, because we have this whole juxtaposition of like, it's a fluid battle that everything is happening concurrently, but the camera can only be on one person at a time. So we have this like back and forth like we had previously, right? Well, now we switch over to Boba Fett, and I just remember when I said that the gaffy stick was like is the gaffy stick not the most versatile tool you've ever seen?
Apparently it's not just for brushing Bantha's teeth.
Yeah, and apparently when it's in the hands of a skilled wielder, oh my god.
Lethal.
Yeah. Moving swiftly between the rocks, Boba Fett picks off one trooper after another, shattering armor along the way, and undoubtedly whatever flesh and bone structures
seeing that beneath. Screenshot of that one guy splayed out.
Oh my god!
You said he looked like a pinata.
Well,
in the descriptive audio.
In the descriptive audio, that's what she called it.
Yeah,
split him open like a pinata.
Like a pinata. Oh, yeah. So this whole sequence with Boba Fett, I just want to talk about this for a second, because I think I put it. Did I put it here in my notes? Oh, maybe I didn't. This whole section here, we've had this like overtures, and we talked about how the legend and the myth around Boba Fett has always been bigger than the character itself.
Yeah.
Like he's the most, the deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy.
I feel like we finally got something that matches that.
Right. I mean, visually, if you're not a fan, if you haven't followed any of the other materials, if you're only watching the films, that's your only knowledge of Boba Fett, he's a guy who stands around and nods.
Yeah, he's all hype.
Right. He shoots 3 blasts, from his rifle in the entire film trilogy.
A blind Han Solo accidentally knocks him into the Sarlacc pit.
Right. To me, and maybe, this lends itself to Robert Rodriguez's style, but this sequence with him going like full on like beast mode, I'm going to call it, with the gaffy stick.
His facial expressions.
Holy cow. Yeah. And I mean that, like Tamira Morrison, we talked about like sort of his acting chops, and we were maybe a little trepidatious about what he was going to bring to it. I go back to his playing the Doctore in Spartacus, and that certainly really shone through in this.
Yeah, totally did, actually. Yeah, I was way glad that we leaned that direction rather than Arthur Curry's father.
Oh yeah, big time. Even though he still had perfect teeth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so this, it's 40 years later, this sequence, I think, pays off the hype that we've all sort of like, oh, I wish he could do this, or I wish we'd see him do more.
The legends are true.
Yeah,
they
very
actually
much.
There's 2 sequences, and this is the first one, and then they top it.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yes.
They actually top it. There's a new trooper here too, guys.
So
the mortar trooper, and with the yellow pauldron and the yellow. I'm not familiar with that guy. Are you?
Yellow striping. We saw some yellow accents on stormtroopers in Rebels, but they were on the jump trooper.
Yes,
I believe.
Yes. Yep.
Now I tried to do. I did a little bit of reading on sort of stormtrooper pauldrons and sort of the rank conventions, and it didn't seem like it was really worthy to go on like extensively about it.
It doesn't track like the clone armor. It's easy to sort of figure out the formulas there.
I mean, the red one is or the red or orange one, depending on how well you see color, essentially just denotes a commander. I mean, to me, the first time we saw that, it was like, oh, sand trooper, but
right.
That just marked him as being a guy on Tatooine, as far as I was concerned.
I have a few action figures in the 3.7 inch line,
yep,
7.5 line, and they have orange pauldrons, and they're called Sergeant in one, and they're called Commander in another one. And they got the white pauldron, and he's just an officer. So I don't know if there's
no slick
serious rhyme or reason.
Yeah, even like what I read last night said that a black pauldron was indicative of an enlisted man or an enlisted person. But then it talks about the Black Pauldron in conjunction with the Death Troopers, and that in that context, it's actually meant that they're specialists with special skills and special gear, and that through the Death Troopers' enhanced helmet, Death Trooper vision, I guess, it actually revealed more information. Like you had to put the ultraviolet light on it kind of thing to read the secret code, I guess.
There's talk that they're also genetically modified in some fashion to be larger, stronger, faster.
The Death Troopers. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. But yeah, they do seem kind of taller, don't they?
7 feet tall or something.
Yeah, they were taller. Yeah. But anyway, the whole rank convention doesn't really stack up. But it's okay. I mean, it doesn't. He's
cool looking. It's the first time we've seen a mortar trooper for sure.
Yeah, and again, so like going back to this low tech, like I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's a 40 millimeter mortar.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But it's cool though, because like
at the same time, Stormtrooper misses.
Well, okay. Yeah, there is that. Conventional military 40 millimeter mortar is a crew serve weapon, requires 2 people. One person carries the tube and the other person carries the ammunition for it. So clearly, in Star Warsiness, the materials are much lighter that one man or one trooper can operate this thing by himself.
Maybe it didn't have 2 yellow pauldrons.
Maybe. At the same time, while Mortarman is setting up, we get a gun crew setting up an E-Web heavy repeater.
And we know it's nasty from the
We do, yeah. So Mortar Trooper, he sends around and it lands far. Right? Missing.
The first one.
Missing. But this is where I get into this whole, like, this really plays out like a war movie, because he ends up doing exactly what a mortar crew would do.
Walking it in.
We call it bracketing, where like if you go long, you send the next one short, and then you start cutting those distances in half until you finally, as you say, you walk it in until you're right on top of. So the first one goes long, the second one goes short, but it's enough that the explosion is close enough that it forces Fennec to get up and move from her position of cover. That creates an opportunity for the E-Web crew to open up, and then she moves again. Her next cover position is where the third round comes in, and it nails the rock that she's literally hiding behind, enough so that she can kind of get her feet up against it and kind of push it, and finally it goes off. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's a to my way of thinking, is this a callback to Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I wrote this in my notes. Dodging E-Web fire and mortar rounds, Shan uses her bionic stomach muscles to push a giant boulder down on the stormtroopers, Raiders style.
Yeah. And then like the mostly round boulder tumbles down the hill.
It reminded me a lot of bowling.
Yes, I said it pancaked several troopers along the way, including the E-Web gunner.
And he kept it, but he, to his credit, he stood there and
he tried
to shoot that boulder to death.
He tried.
He thought
he thought he could play asteroids with it, and every time, split it down, but it didn't work out that way. Yeah. At this point, Boba's made his way down to the bottom of the hill, and there's a small cadre of troopers there that he dispatches. Yeah. And I don't know.
My favorite scene actually
is this the one where he taps him on the shoulder?
He grabs the officer underneath the helmet and flips him 360.
Oh yeah.
And impales him. I was just like, wow. Because he doesn't look that strong. He just, it's a 200-pound guy that he just flips in the air like that. Wow, that's crazy cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you see like there's this savageness about him, like the facial expression where, like, I don't know if that's partly because, the actor is a Maori actor and like
channeling his Maori ancestry there.
Yeah. But it comes across like super, super cool. And then we have this nice little shot where he kind of looks over, and conveniently enough, the Razor Crest is there, doors wide open.
Always doors wide open.
Got to leave a door open. This time this time it's the hatch and not the ramp. And of course, for us, it's an obvious foreshadowing of what we're about to get, like literally handed to us on a silver platter. But keep the tension going.
We cut away.
Yeah, cut back to Fennec Shand, who
my pearls at this point.
Cut back to Fennec, who's still on her lethal run and gun as she's also moving down the hill. And there's this moment where it's like the tension there, it keeps like, you think for a minute the tension's going to break, and then it doesn't, because like seemingly out of nowhere, there's like another squad and another squad and another squad. She gets to the bottom of the hill and she gets this like moment of reprieve. And then another lander swoops in and starts chugging out more guys. And she's just like, the way she rips her helmet off, you can almost hear her like, fuck, coming out of her. You know what I mean?
The moment just before that where she's kind of backed up and she does this running leap backwards.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It takes 2 shots. And I believe this is the first, and very, very Rodriguez, but the very first slow-mo in Star Wars live action that we've ever seen.
That may very well be. I certainly couldn't think of anything. When you sent that to me last night, we were talking about that, and I'm like, live action, I don't think we've seen that before.
No, and it's very reminiscent of his style of directing, for sure.
Yeah.
We might have seen slow-mo once, very briefly.
Where?
In, I believe, Empire, when Luke goes in the cave, and the helmet.
Oh, that's right. Correct. That's right.
I mean, for anything, it doesn't really affect it, but it makes you focus on that face inside the helmet.
Yeah.
The frame rate is definitely dropped in that scene.
It's certainly, and the slow-mo in that scene is played for different reasons, though, right? Because it's this like whole supernatural experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but this one, it's all action beats.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, different use of the technique. It's interesting though how the same technique can be used contextually 2 different ways to tell or to convey 2 different emotions, right?
Probably went to film school, didn't you?
Not this guy. I'd like to. On some level,
wouldn't that be a blast?
Yeah, it would.
Do it all over again with this brain.
Oh my gosh, yes. She rips off her helmet, has that moment of like, ah!
And fires it at a dude. And
then is promptly drawn into another firefight.
And I noted the juxtaposition because she pulls her helmet off.
Yep.
And then the next scene is Boba with the helmet on.
Yeah, that's right.
But before Mando
before we get there,
that's right. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
Mando makes his recovery finally, missing like a considerable amount of like what's going on.
Right.
He spots that the second lander is now spewing troopers out and makes his third attempt to try and pull Grogu off the Seeing Stone, and once again he is repulsed. And I think this is kind of again, I said earlier about his willingness and his drive as a parent and what he would do for his child, that he is so singular of purpose that having, not been successful twice before, he's like, all right,
gonna try
again. And this is where I really made the decision that he's not the surrogate protector anymore. Like, if there was any doubt, it's completely gone. It's
completely gone.
100% transition. He's the father now. It's not the father figure. He's the father.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's a distinction that needs to be made there, because we've all had father figures, in our lives, people that we would look up to, but that's still not your dad. You know what I mean? Like, he is definitely the father now.
100%. I agree.
So again, not being able to get through and resolve that he's not going to be able to do this, Mando gets in the fight, which is kind of funny because okay, and all the struggle to get him off the thing, and finally, it seems like as soon as he turns to run away, he couldn't have been more than 6 feet down the hill, Grogu pops out of the trance.
It's true. It's true. It's
another
Which leaves us,
inconsistency.
did he pass out or did he get through?
So, jokingly, and I've said this before, I've talked to a couple of people who didn't really have a real good understanding of what they thought was happening. So they were asking me, what do you think happened? Who do you think? Because they thought it was like he was an open conduit for someone to call him. And I'm like, no, man, that's essentially a big radio tower. And he just made a phone call. Do you know what I mean?
He lit a fire there. Yeah.
So I do think he got through. I'm going to talk about that a little bit because I've been leaning one way and I may be going the other way now, but I'm not there yet. So yeah, comes out of his trance. He's clearly tuckered out. And then he just lays down and has a little nap. Little nappy poo. Absolutely. Meanwhile, back on the ground, we've got Fennec, who's clearly outnumbered. And I think she kind of, she doesn't say a whole lot in this spot, but her facial expression and the way that she's playing it, it's like she's bracing herself for the inevitable. This is the end.
And as much as Fennec Shand as she is, I see a lot of Agent May in this piece.
How can you not, though?
I know.
Yeah. But no, there's this moment where she's rescued and there's Mando standing on top of the rock and lets loose with a flight of whistling birds and drops 6 guys that are kind of just the closest guys to her.
Yeah, at least buys them some time for sure.
Yeah.
She's like, it's bad. And he's like, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that clearly...
They're way better at shooting. These guys are way better at shooting than your typical stormtroopers because they're just pinging. He's literally blocking dozens of shots that would have killed Fennec.
Well, this is it, right? Body. I mean, her fighting spirit is seemingly restored by this gesture, and they make this valiant attempt to try to fight their way out of it. And I wrote it as a tightening circle of stormtroopers. Mando shields Fennec with his own body, and in typical fashion is once again the blaster bolt magnet. But
this reminded me a lot of Desperado and the scenes with I can't remember the actor, but where the woman and the man character were there's a dance fight and it reminded me of that, the way they were circling one another,
right,
and shooting each other under each other's arms.
Well, I got a dance vibe out of it too, but I wasn't. Am I seeing that, or is that really happening?
No, it felt a lot like Desperado. Actually.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's less of a, we've seen him just take shots before, but this was less of a I'm getting shot versus I'm putting myself between you and them.
He even tells her, "You can go."
Yeah.
For the last one, you can go.
I had to listen to that a couple of times because I'm like, what did he just say to her? Because he says
last encounter.
He's like, you can get out of this. I owe you from the last time.
That's right.
I thought, well, that's kind of cool. So Mando dropping to his knees in the hail of blaster fire, all seems lost. But then out of nowhere, one of those explosive charges that he'd used originally on Gideon's TIE fighter. And also in a couple of...
is it the same charge that he whipped down the hallway?
It is, the pair of them. Yeah, that's right. Same charge drops in.
And the spider creatures as well.
True. Yes, that's also right. Yeah. So the thing drops in. It's already wound up because the timer is virtually like... dee. It goes off. And again, I'm going to use the comic book analogy of the splash page. Mm-hmm. Boba Fett drops in... I wrote, methodically picking off stormtroopers, we're treated to one of the best action sequences in any Star Wars production ever. Boba tears through the troopers, unleashing every familiar gadget and some we've never seen on screen before.
Knee rockets.
Yeah, namely his wrist missiles from the Red Gauntlet and from his right knee pad.
Wicked.
Boba is a force to be reckoned with, and this scene had to have been written with the notion of deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy, and boy, does it live up to that claim.
It's so good. It's mixed hand to hand. He's using all the elements of his armor. He's a crack shot. The one, it's even a throwback to the Force Awakens where Han Solo shoots the one stormtrooper without looking.
Yeah.
He does the crossed arm kind of battle pose and shoots him. But I really hope that it's Morrison in the armor, but whoever's in that armor,
yeah,
like there's a level of energy to that fight.
Yep.
Like it's like the finishing moves all have an exclamation point.
They
like
really do. Yeah.
It's very rough martial art that he's, it's like a gun kata.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I gotta say, I gotta sit for a second and let's talk about the way he looks here.
Sure.
It looks like he's a little thicker than he was.
I was gonna bring that up, that you'd said that, like,
maybe you eat good in the belly of a Sarlacc. But I'm looking at him aesthetically with the tunic, with the armor attached.
Yep.
But right over top of the black robe.
Yep.
Right, and the big heavy gun belt.
Yep.
With all the slugs for his cycler rifle, and the cape billowing out the bottom of the tunic, like a much longer cape. You still got the little green cape on the shoulder. It's still there, but the like the hood still look like he could probably have the Boba Fett helmet with the hood up still. And the black, and it looks so amazing. Like, how do you top that look? It's so iconic.
We talked about Cobb Vanth sort of not being able to fill it out.
Yes.
And now we see, like, it may be
it's
a little
almost as if he's bursting out of the armor, but not in any negative way at all. It looks like there's scenes there where I was like, he looks like Darth Maul if they put the Boba Fett armor on Darth Maul. It's all black.
Sure,
and flowing, and it's so good. Oh my God, it was so good. I can't wait for that 6-inch figure right there.
I think there is some, you know what, and not to turn it into a conversation about toys, but if Hasbro doesn't do that figure, I wouldn't, dollars to donuts, I bet there'd be a Figuarts version of that, because they tend to,
hell yeah,
they tend to do a little bit more of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, based on that thought that he's half Darth Maul, half Boba Fett, how long until somebody customs that?
Oh, well, look at how quickly we talked about Carson Teva and him getting an action figure, and like overnight somebody had already customed one. Yeah. It doesn't take long.
Cobb Vanth by Salacious B. Porkins there from Instagram.
Yes.
Shout out there. He dropped that overnight.
So
it was out on Saturday morning.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of funny, and I know that it's not a term that a lot of people, maybe you're familiar with this, maybe you're not, but I kind of summarized that this whole thing was kind of like war porn. Oh,
dude.
With Boba's display, and both scenes, his robed monk scene, and now this, like,
with or without.
They turned it to 11 on this one.
But exactly.
And we got a little bit of it. I mean, I jumped for joy when I saw the armor shattering, stormtrooper armor with her hammers and stuff.
Yeah.
And this took that to such a whole other level. Like the sound, the crunching sounds that we get in here.
Yeah.
He's just splattering guys all over the place. The one scene where he grabs the guy from the back, shoots a rocket at one guy, pulls him in, punches him in the stomach, and then shoots the rocket off.
Yeah, the rocket into his belly.
Oh man. Wow.
So we see with Mando and his whistling birds that there's a small complement there, like 6 or 7, I think, at a time. How many wrist rockets are in that gauntlet? Because they're fired in pairs. Did you see that?
Yeah.
They come out in pairs, and clearly they're at least as powerful as a blaster bolt. I mean, they're knocking troopers out at a single.
And as per Cobb Vanth's little sort of saying there at the end of the season opener, I'd hate to see that armor if it weren't broken.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that again, because I think there may have been a visual nod that it's still broken. But yeah, so at this point, the remaining troopers, they literally break rank and they flee. They're like, fall back. And while the landers make for liftoff, Boba strides forward, dropping the viewfinder, and he aims at the engines of one of the landers. Now, from his perspective, it's the lander on the left.
Mm-hmm.
But when he fires, do you notice that it misses?
I did notice.
Before he even says I was aiming at the other one, I'm like, that's not
right.
what he was aiming for. He's aiming at the engines of the one on the left, and it nails the cockpit of the one on the right.
Yes.
Causing the ship to fall into the other one, and then they are both destroyed in the crash.
The will of the Force, maybe.
Maybe, but is it, or is this an indication of like
broken
it's
armor?
Still broken, so things are just a little bit off.
Yeah.
You know?
I went the other way on this scene.
Yeah?
With the throwback to Rise of Skywalker where they get Chewbacca
and
they lift off.
Yes.
My first thought was, oh crap, somebody's already grabbed the kid and they're bailing.
Oh, right.
And then the tragedy could be that Boba Fett's about to kill the child.
Oh, you know what? I totally see that now.
And then, you know, they crash, it lands, and we carry on. It's like, okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Would they go back and replay that emotional beat?
I don't know.
But they never really touch on it, so I moved past it pretty quick.
Yeah,
that was my initial reaction.
But certainly visually speaking, it does have that, you know, there were 2 landers in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
We were only privy to one of them.
It's true.
But there were 2.
It almost doesn't give you enough time to breathe because we get the next scene like right on top of that. Which is
right.
crazy.
So here's the thing, right?
Character.
Yes. How much time did we spend talking about the Razor Crest and all those other times where we jokingly said, I thought he was going to lose the crest?
I screamed no.
We've
like
yeah,
Darth
me too.
Vader.
Me too. Where standing there, having just, you know, defeated the stormtroopers, there's a singular laser blast from seemingly orbit, and it's this long, and you're like, oh no. As the blaster bolt pierces the veil of cloud cover and just, well, what did I write? I wrote, looking at the crater where the crest once stood.
Decimates it.
Yeah, like complete loss, like no possible way of salvaging anything. It's parts. Like it's
over for that.
So when I say the episode was aptly titled as The Tragedy, I'm like, oh my God, twofold tragedy. Like not only do we lose the child, but did I say that? We lose the Razor Crest as well.
Certainly. Completely the death of a man.
Yeah. We did argue that, you know, that the Razor Crest was a character in its own right.
It was so quirky. It had idiosyncrasies. It's like, you know, it almost had a back and forth with him. He did that bang on the dash a few times. You know, so it's very much was a character.
It had the same vibe as the Falcon.
Yeah, it really
was
does.
Growing to that point.
Do you want to talk about this a little bit more about the crest, because I got a kind of an opinion on where that might go.
Sure.
Well, certainly, and based on that opinion, I did some research too.
Well, wait, let's save it then, because I'll give you the first half of what I think here. The first half, I think, we know the ship is integral to the character. It's part of him, right?
Yeah. Mando
needs a new ship. So one way that could be handled is they could go the Star Trek route and they could just rebuild the Razor Crest, or he gets a new. They talk about the Razor Crest as being pre-Empire technology.
It's Razor
class. So he goes out and he gets another Razor Crest class vessel, and it's maybe, you know, in better condition than the first version of the Razor Crest. There's also another option that we can go down, which we'll talk to in a little bit, because before we can get to that, we have to talk about something else first.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
So, the Razor Crest is destroyed, and I said that at the behest of Fennec Shan, Boba Fett jets off to save the Slave One from a similar fate.
Yeah, get back to your ship.
Yeah, where Mando stares at the crater where the crest once stood. He stands there, and again, you know, we talk about how well a faceless character is able to emote.
It's crazy.
And it's like that, the expression, like he just lost his best friend. Like his best friend just died.
I even had it in my notes, and I forgot to mention it, but that same feeling, the look on Tamora Morrison's face when he's fighting with the gaffy sticks,
yeah,
you could see that look through his face while he's got that helmet on.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like there's an intensity to the helmet, and I didn't really realize how different the helmets were either until they're like being flashed back and forth.
Yeah, when they're standing on screen, like they're standing beside each other on screen, you're like, oh, there is.
Yeah, there's some vast differences.
Yeah. Turning his attention skyward with the Mando vision, Din Djarin spots the Arquitans light cruiser that we know to be Moff Gideon's cruiser. And that prompts him, with the kid. And he's got to go and make sure that Grogu is attended to. So then we have this like transition shot where we're now standing on the bridge of the cruiser. And, there's some dialogue between the comms officer and Moff Gideon about, how I think have the dark troopers engaged. Yeah, that's it. So we spent a lot of time on this, and I kind of maybe in my heart of hearts, I wanted them to be purge troopers, but they are definitely not purge troopers.
They're not.
No.
It's almost a stretch to say that they're even the battle suit versions of the Mark IIIs. I think that we have a very droid version of the Mark IIIs.
Yep.
If anything, I just as you were typing it to me last night, I was theorizing that maybe they were part organic a la Grievous.
Yeah.
You had sent almost at the same moment. Maybe they have biological brains. We might both be reaching there. I think you've got a straight sort of modern version of K2SO with a jetpack and built to actually deal with Mandos.
Yeah, maybe.
And they do have a Darth Vader flair to their masks.
They're do.
Very careful to be a little bit blurry or a little bit close on the faces. They didn't really give you there's not a really decent screenshot of a whole face shot, really.
Yeah. I think these things definitely share a design lineage or a design heritage with the Legends Phase 3 Trooper in terms of their overall general aesthetic.
Absolutely.
But like you say, with the K2SO reference, I love that the people that create this stuff are really paying attention to the visual stuff that we've seen, and they share that common design aesthetic with the hollow elbows and the hollow knees and the hollow ankles, torso. I guess. Yeah. I just love that.
Yeah, that was the dead giveaway to me. Was as soon as I saw the sort of the thin spine in the middle of that torso, I went, "Oh, yeah,
you couldn't fit a person."
They hone in on one guy closing his hand, and it looks very mechanical.
What else I got out of this? I don't know if you guys were fans of the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, or it's
big fan of the first 3 seasons.
Did you watch the spin-off, the Caprica series?
I never did.
Or Blood and Chrome, which was supposed to be a new spinoff that never went anywhere.
I saw parts of Blood and Chrome.
So Blood and Chrome re-envisioned the classic Centurions.
Okay,
and these guys remind me of the classic Cylon Centurion in spades.
Yeah. No, very, very much so. They also remind me of the dark stormtroopers from one of the Star Killer games. There's like a black trooper in one of those games that they have. I believe they have purple eyes.
Was that in the Force Unleashed games?
Could have been in the Force Unleashed games. I believe that I have an action figure. I don't know. It would take me too long.
Okay.
Yeah. No, they're seriously cool, and I knew that we were in serious trouble.
Yeah.
And that we were really honing in on the title of the episode coming up.
These 4 guys, or these 4 troopers, rocketing in with these like boosters,
repulsor boots,
boosters,
the
Astro Boy, very much so.
Mm-hmm. And they were moving. You could, they made a point of showing them that they were clipping like almost faster than a starfighter.
But there's some Favreau influence and his experience on Iron Man that the camera angles were really evocative of stuff we'd seen that way in the MCU.
Absolutely.
So Mando and Fennec tear up the hillside in their desperate attempt to get to Grogu, but unfortunately they are too late, and Grogu is plucked from the stone by one of the dark troopers, and then they all rocket back up to the cruiser.
So it seems run up to the top was a bit longer this time.
Exactly. So like that inconsistency about time and distance blurs, right, as the story demands, and that's okay, but it took me out of the episode just ever so slightly.
I was too busy going, oh no.
Oh, I know. Like the beat of the child actually being, and the fact that they make a point to show you through Mando's helmet, the terror on the child's face, and
Did you see the production art at the end?
Yeah.
The look on the child's face much more terrified than the one they actually get of screen time.
They also show, talking about the post-credit artwork, they also show the Dark Troopers to be armed with blaster rifles, which they did not carry in the episode.
I did see that. Maybe they pop out of the arms or something, RoboCop style. The man, I called it. Yeah. And I'm not special. I mean, we all could have called it easily. I knew we were going to lose the child, and even knew we were going to lose the child in this episode when I saw the title. Yeah. And it still took my breath away. It still stings. Oh no. Oh, because I was like, I could feel that they did a lot of legwork fathering him. Oh, solidifying that idea at the beginning of the episode. And I really felt the pain. Oh,
it's a huge sting. Like you say you felt it. And I said, I think people with children, I think, can relate to some of the elements in the series, maybe a little bit better than people who don't, or who have not been in a position where they're responsible for another human life. But yeah, like you really, really feel like this. Oh my God, it's this complete sense of dread.
It really brings it home in the next scene when he's like rooting through the crash.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
Before you get there, Fennec sends Boba Fett after them.
Yeah. So there's this.
He's like, they've got the kid. Get him.
They've got the baby. I think she even says baby or infant.
Yeah, she does say baby.
Yeah, she says baby, and then he's like, "Okay, I'm moving in. I've got a lock.
He's supposed to take care of the situation.
Yeah. So let's work through this, because I want to come back to that for a second, and I want to pick that apart. Not that I'm trying to nitpick, but I can't. I think that our fans of our show kind of expect this kind of stuff, so I'm going to come back to that. But Din makes an overture about, no, don't, because I don't want the child to be hurt. The child. So she calls him off, and Boba's like, okay, I'll do a loose follow and see where they go. And again, pushing up through the clouds, like, I still don't know, like, did it really have to be played that way? Like the shock value, like, was it really that shocking to him that, because he's like, they're back. Who's back? The Empire.
Well, I think that the idea, even if he's privy to some of the information that's been going on, and assumedly he's kind of been in a cave on Tatooine for 5 years.
Yeah.
He would have known that the Empire fell, certainly, especially if we'd had any dealings with the locals at all, or even the Sand people, I would imagine. And was aware that the fact that there were remnants. Yep. There's also another continuity error here for me in a second. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly he knew that there were remnants still around, especially on the Outer Rim, because this is where the part where there's a continuity error. She makes the point of saying, but the Republic is in control of the Outer Rim.
The Outer Rim, yeah.
But
or under the jurisdiction.
Tython a deep core world.
Well, this is it, right? Like, up until now, the in-canon references for Tython have all said that it's a deep core world.
So I don't know if that was a misstep, and I think that our guys are too astute for missteps.
Yeah.
And so that places Tython in the Outer Rim.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moot point, really, for the scope of the show, seriously, but it's interesting.
You probably won't even be back here.
No, exactly. It's interesting though. Like, wait a minute, it just moved. It, like, hey, we just picked up a planet. Mind you, the Death Star is planet size, and it could move around the galaxy. So why not? Sure. We'll move actual planets now. Well, yeah.
And that used to be a legit planet.
For sure.
Fucking engine on it, outboard motor.
Now it's apocalypse.
Right. So they're back, the Empire. So here's another, I don't want to call it a misstep, but here's another point that takes me out of it. But I really tried to make this fit, that there is a story reason why this works. Why isn't Mando talking directly to Boba? He's got a comm built into his helmet. So to me, that implies that maybe Fennec Shan and Boba are operating on a secure comm channel that Din just does not have access to. But
no, yeah, certainly they've got some. They've spent a little time. Like if he's had the time to, and it lends to the idea that time has passed during these 2 seasons too.
Yeah,
the time to like her heal from that crazy surgery.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Back to tanks, I guess. Okay, yeah, but
and it could throw back to the armor being broken.
Oh, possibly. But I mean, he would still have the comm on his ship, right? But I think, in terms of like Mando as a character, like, he's in the middle of a battle and he's talking to Queel, and he's talked to Grief Karga and other characters before without, having to make any like no handheld thing, no push a button on my wrist. He just talks, right?
Well, it could be a thing that they've dialed in pre-battle.
Yeah, possibly.
Like, talk to me on Channel 4.
Right, and that's where I was going at, where I think it's just like...
Yeah, that's probably the most logical.
It's a secure comm channel between them, right?
I could live with that.
Yeah. So back to the crater.
There's a line.
Go for it.
Line of the episode.
Yeah,
I
go.
forgot. Are you sure they're back? This isn't a spice dream.
Not a spice dream. Yeah.
Oh, I love that line so much because it's just we hear about spice and the Han Solo dropping his spice at the first sign of the Imperial patrol, and so now you're starting to get like the idea that it's a drug that people do. It's sort of neat because even Karga.
Oh, that's right.
In one of the episodes,
go lose yourself.
By the time you're done on the spice, you'll have forgotten about all your problems, and so it's kind of neat.
I kind of wonder too, like
Dune, spice is a drug.
Yeah, I thought about that as well. Like they share some similar lineage.
There you go. New word.
Sineage. They share sineage. That's a similar lineage for all you kids. Sineage. When we look at Boba, now we got a really good look at him in this episode without his helmet on, and you can sort of see the extent of his healed injuries. Mm-hmm. Was spice a painkiller for him, at some point along the healing road, or
could be? He's certainly been to enough underworld get-togethers.
Yeah, yeah.
And in some of the writing, they do say it has medicinal purposes.
He was at that fancy dinner party once.
It's true. There was a point. I'm just started reading they released 8 chapters of the High Republic, Charles Sewell's High Republic novel.
Yes.
And just a little thing, but kind of sort of on point, is that Bacta is experimental at this point in time.
Oh wow.
And so they're trying to find ways of mass producing it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Little story beat there. So yeah, so maybe people used spice pre-Bacta.
I would think that, on a world like Tatooine that's so fringe and so away from everything as we're led to believe, that maybe Bacta was, in short supply, on a planet like that, but
it's probably true.
Yeah. Oh, back at the crater and, again, playing for all the feels in the galaxy. The one piece to survive, and of course it had to be the shift knob.
The Beskar shift knob.
I almost shed a tear for that.
It's like looking at that when he's throwing away other pieces, like, come on, find the knob. It's got to be there.
In some ways, like using the war movie analogy, it's like being handed your buddy's dog tags.
Dog tags. That's
exactly know what I mean?
It gives him, it grounds him.
Yeah.
As a physical reminder that's like literally digging into his belly.
Yep.
He puts in his tunic. There's a physical reminder literally digging into his belly that it's on now. Yeah,
it really is. So, so that the stakes are high for a couple of reasons. And if the child wasn't enough, the destruction of the ship, or the allegory for his best friend, it's personal. It's so personal now.
And then at the moment when you realize as the viewer how personal it is,
yep,
he pulls the spear.
Yeah, the Beskar spear.
And for me, I went, a Beskar can withstand the super laser of an Imperial cruiser?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like there's literally melted, like there's nothing else discernible.
No.
It makes the ball hokey, but at the same time, in my world, that ball is Beskar.
Oh yeah.
But that blew my mind. That ostensibly a TIE fighter could fire on him, and he would just go ping, 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 ping.
Well, I don't know. Star Wars, we talked about this in the last episode about how blasters have this physical punch to them. I'm sure he'd be rattled if not,
certainly
turned to soup inside of
his. In some of my research
his
for this
undersuit.
episode, I discovered a canon explanation for the dent in Boba's helmet.
Oh, cool!
And it almost doesn't jive with what we've learned about Beskar in these 2 seasons, and it was a cut scene from the Clone Wars animated, where a young Boba in full armor has a duel, a standoff with Cad Bane.
Oh, okay.
And what you see is they both draw on fire,
yeah,
and that's the end of the scene. But you're left with Boba's helmet laying on the ground with a smoking dent in it.
Oh, interesting.
And you're never left with, you don't know whether he killed Cad Bane in that moment or not.
Interesting.
But you're like, man, we've seen blasters go crazy on this armor. How does it dent it? And even in the EU explanation, Boba fires rounds at Darth Vader, and Darth Vader deflects them with a lightsaber, and that's what causes the dent. But both don't jive with what we know.
No, when really,
it's like,
I think we've seen, if anything, blaster bolts just polish, Mando's armor a little bit more.
Certainly, I need to clean my armor.
But at the same time, he says the armor goes back quite a ways.
He does say that.
So maybe it's from a previous, forging where maybe it wasn't as thick.
A cutscene is hardly canon.
No, exactly, but it's still fun to
speculate,
to put that level of speculation on it and look at it.
There's another thing that he says here is like, this is my father's armor.
That's right.
We have that's conclusive now, but we see Boba in the Clone Wars use his father's helmet as a bomb in an attempt to kill Mace Windu. So is that Jango's helmet? Does he go recover it? Does Jango's helmet survive being packed full of fucking... Sorry, my language.
No, it's
packed full of dynamite, ostensibly, and detonated. That's a neat thought, that this is this Jango's armor, but not the original helmet.
All the references to it, say that it is Jango's armor, albeit heavily modified, and that part is clear. But that does raise a good question. Like, I don't know. Like, I
read a good article about the morbidity of the scene where Boba picks up his father's helmet.
Yeah,
and
no head rolls out of it.
But there's apparently, you can slow it down frame by frame, and I've never took it upon myself to do this, but George Lucas claims that there's a moment to offset that morbidity where you actually see his head fly out of the helmet for a frame, so that's just an empty helmet and not the head.
Yeah, I definitely. I think we've all kind of joked about that, the headless helmet, but like, you do kind of wonder, like, we can make the Jack Porkins remark, it didn't wear a chin strap.
Right. But that adds some depth to the character.
Oh, does it ever?
He doesn't walk over to his father's body.
No.
He walks over to the helmet.
To the helmet, yeah.
And so that's his father to him. The armor is his father.
Yeah.
He's as Mandalorian as they come, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a major way here, because at this point, once they've had that acknowledgement of, like, and Tamira Morrison says, and I love the way he says it too, and I know it's his Maori, his accent, but it's like the way he says Beskar, it's just like, oh, Beskar. Yeah. And then he invites him. He doesn't. To me, it's an invitation. The way he says it, his tone has shifted a little bit, and now he's like, "I want you to see something," like it's this open invitation. And he fiddles with the wrist gauntlet, and he's like, "This is my chain code. My chain code's been encrypted in this armor for 25 years." And he points a little bit, and he's like, "This is me, Boba Fett. This is my father, Jango." And then we're just sort of left to our own devices. But I think you were super sleuth on this one.
Yeah, I went. We discovered the language, and we went deep on it.
Yeah,
and the structure of the writing is hieroglyphic style, so vertically top down written.
Yep.
But I was able to ascertain essentially.
So this is, for people who don't know, this is ancient Mandoa.
Mandoa.
Yeah.
So the first word is foundling, and the first sentence, is foundling took into the.
Yeah.
It fades out to the bottom of the hologram. The year.
Yep.
But then it fades out into nothing. the word Concord Dawn.
Yep.
The word mentor, Jaster.
Yep.
Father Fett, and then Boba Fett. Those are all the discernible words from that holo.
Yeah, so
that tells us so friggin' much right there. So they drop Concord Dawn, which is the EU birthplace of Jango Fett.
That's right.
They drop Jaster, which is Jaster Muriel, who is the EU mentor of Jango Fett.
That's right.
He's also the Mandalore, leader of the Super Commandos who fights a civil war against Death Watch.
That's right.
He's killed by Tar Vizsla in battle, and Jango Fett becomes the Mandalore.
The Mandalore, yeah.
And we talked before about maybe Pre-Vizsla or Paz Vizsla might be the heir to the Darksaber. We now have a legitimate argument that Boba Fett is the heir to the Darksaber and the one true Mandalore.
It's entirely possible.
Crazy boys.
especially under the new understanding of, what is a foundling and how does a foundling relate to Mandalorian culture through that whole lineage of the we made the argument for the Death Watch not being able to flesh out their ranks with naturally born Mandalorians. Sure. If that sect of culture, Mandalorian culture, embraces the idea of foundlings, then it absolutely legitimizes him.
It instantly does for Jaren, who is our metric for what a Mandalorian is.
Yeah.
He immediately goes, well, then the armor does belong to you.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. He doesn't even bat an eye about it. He's like, okay.
Not even a second's worth.
Yep.
This guy is Mandalorian.
Okay.
Yes.
As much as I am.
Yes.
Right. And again, there's that, the mirror, the reflection of, where Mando once again identifies with another character that he sees a bit of himself in. There's
another part of this identifying himself as the son of Jango, and it's that he's first, like, we know it. Jango says, "This is my son Boba."
That's right.
In Attack of the Clones, but to have the character of Boba sort of state it,
yeah.
What it does here is, again, recontextualizing the sequels. It lends credibility,
yes,
to the idea that Palpatine's clone could be viewed as his son in public, and therefore that Rey is actually his granddaughter.
Yeah, it
clears that all up for me.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm not worried if it's her uncle or her brother or a clone or it actually makes it fixes it. It really does fix it right there for me.
Yeah,
I'm okay
absolutely.
with that now.
Once again, the Mandalorian, smoothing the way for the inconsistencies and the stuff that a lot of fans did not appreciate about the sequel trilogy.
I think you're going to get a Snoke backstory soon.
I'd like a Snoke backstory because of that, again, is one of the biggest things I think that the fan backlash, going into by the end of The Last Jedi, people are like, what about, it was all this emphasis placed on who this character was and where he came from, and it's like, what? That's it? Like, just throw away villain?
I think I said it a few episodes ago too, that we know that Palpatine ostensibly wins.
Yeah.
40 years in the future, the Sith are back, and he's a living, breathing being again, and that does not bode well for Grogu.
No, it doesn't. There's still some things that can happen though, where potentially Grogu can be removed from galactic affairs in some way, shape, or form, but a lot of things have to happen in order for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things.
Well, there's a lot of years, but there's almost as much time in realities that we've spent being with Star Wars in 40 years or 42 years as are about to pass before the end of the Rise of Skywalker in story years.
Right.
So there's a breadth of there's a huge gap in time that hasn't been filled with ideas.
That's
right.
Right.
Bookends, but we get to tell those stories now.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
I think The Mandalorian is doing, like filling in all those holes. You know how voracious we were with those EU novels about how, and I think some people, fans, casual fans that maybe can't appreciate that sort of, the ravenous fan who wants every microscopic detail filled in. And those EU novels, they really did that in spades. And to me, Mandalorian is now doing that in a visual sense.
I started rereading Heir to the Empire just in preparation for anything that Thrawn might come. Like I'm listening to the second trilogy in audiobooks.
Oh, good.
I'm rereading physically the first trilogy.
Yeah.
Just to like a Thrawn refresher, because I know it's coming. And he's absolutely one of my favorite villains.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back and reread it as well. I'm probably going to, just because it's my favorite, I'm probably going to go back and reread Shadows of the Empire as well.
Oh, for me, it was almost a better story than Return of the Jedi.
It's certainly...
It's the first time that we see things sort of backwards explained.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene in Shadows of the Empire where Lando uses a thermal detonator the way Leia uses the thermal detonator in Jabba's palace.
That's right.
You see where she learns it. You see where she actually physically, because he hands her a couple thermal detonators and she puts them in her belt. So now we literally know where she got them from.
It was the first multimedia Star Wars project that Lucasfilm had ever undertaken.
And the game was stellar.
They actually called it, within the Lucasfilm family of companies and licensees that were working on the project at the time, they actually called it the movie without a movie.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So I mean, of all of those EU stories, it lends itself probably best for a visual adaptation, which I don't know, part of me wants to think that there's still room for that somewhere.
There's a pretty decent visual comic on YouTube.
Oh, that's excellent. I'll go look for that.
That's pretty neat, yeah.
All right, so let's keep going here. He's like, yeah, that armor does belong to you. And Boba says, I appreciate, the return of it. So now we're at this, there's a bit of an impasse and we don't know what to do. But
Mando's you're free to go.
Yeah, he's like, our deal is, what does he say? He says, our deal is complete?
He's in denial. The
child's
gone. He's trying to be cool. He's trying to be cool for his friends right now.
Yeah, I guess so. But Boba, and we get this clear, if you missed it earlier on in the episode, and I'm not sure if we talked about it or not, he made an overt notion to basically say that for the return of the armor, he doesn't say I'll protect you, but he uses the word guarantee. I will guarantee your safety and your little friend. And so now, true to his word, he reiterates that he's going to hold his word, and he says, until the child is returned safely to you, we are in your debt.
And that's where she gives him the little cut eye.
The sideways look,
she totally does there. But
and then the little nod that comes with it.
Who didn't want to see Din Djarin fly off in the Slave One?
Well, that's kind of a neat little... I like that. And I didn't expect them, although of course it makes sense. And where do they go? Right back to Navarro.
Absolutely. And we get another reveal.
We do. And I have to give props to you, sir, on, you called it. She was deputized. She had no choice.
She had no choice.
Yeah.
She has reluctantly accepted. She says the line, these 3 stripes mean I have rules now.
Yeah, they come with the rules I have to uphold. Or
basically
she says there's rules. But we spent a bit of time on this, did he just deputize her? Is this opening the door and all I got to do is pick it up and step through? Or, she's in.
Yeah, I was really adamant on that, whether she likes it or not. And I think that she has certainly come to that realization that there is no real choice here. It's if there's an empire, that you have to be on the other side.
Yeah, and we're treated to another legacy line when Mando says, I heard you'd gone legit. The same way that Solo talks to Lando.
Yeah. I feel that way in my personal life. I got logistics problems of every kind.
Yeah, really. So there's this whole bit about what's going on. I need your help. What do you need? And he's like, can you look somebody up in the prison registry? She's like, okay, I see what I can do. So she starts going through who is it? And he says it's Miggs Mayfeld. Now, did we hear his first name before?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. And I laughed my ass off because no way, shape, or form did I think that we would ever see Bill Burr's character come back. But yeah, he's looking for Miggs Mayfeld.
Yeah, and because he thinks that guy can help him track down Gideon's space.
Yeah.
Because of his formal Imperial ties.
And she makes a point to read his rap sheet, and it's pretty good. But before we get to Miggs Mayfeld, there's this rotating
a barrage of mugshots that she swaps through.
And Andy, you made a point to Good Lord, man. You screen grabbed every one of them.
I told Wes, Andy, I told Wes we created a monster.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you, man.
Yeah.
I got at least 19 of them.
Fantastic, bro.
And each one of them, the first line in Arabesh is their name. Yeah. Second line is the penitentiary where they're currently staying.
Right.
Third line is the term and what got them the term.
Like their prison sentence. Yeah. Like the length of it. Right.
One of them, their chart got low. The Gamorrean pig guard is on Garen 4, serving 15 years for aggravated assault.
Right.
Any other standouts?
As far as I can tell, none of them. This is the first appearance for all of them.
Right.
But there is one standout in that it's possibly an error or possibly not an error. But the first occurrence is a human-looking dude with a beard, going by the name of Torbil Danzin.
Yep.
But the name repeats later under the picture of a Tusken Raider named, again, Torbil Danzin.
Ooh.
So I kind of wonder if that's like a Sharad Het kind of thing where, you know, and I think I'm saying that right. Sharad Het was a Jedi who lived among the Tuskens, and he wasn't a Tusken by birth, but he adopted their ways and their clothing.
Yes.
So maybe it's something like that. That's a really
interesting. That's another. We could dive down there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if we took some of those names and we plop them into the Google machine, if we would get hits outside of this episode of The Mandalorian.
I did not get any hits outside of the
you tried. Okay.
Yeah. We do find out that Mayfield is sent to the Carthon chop fields for 50 years.
Did you look that up?
I didn't.
No, neither did I.
I mean, yes, I did, but there's
no reference for it. Okay. So I'm curious to know if, you know, are we going to get to see that? What are the chop fields? I assume it's some kind of hard labor camp of some kind.
Yeah, it's like the spice mines of Kessel.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the only other thing I did look up other than the names,
the
alien races that are flashed through there.
Okay.
So we do get a good variety. We get Mduilo D, who's a Niktu.
Yep.
We get Thene Cross, who is a possible Zabrak.
Okay, yeah.
Yath Endis, a Quarren.
Yep.
Unga Toba, an Aqualish. Borbin Todd's another Aqualish.
Yes.
Vorg Aslam, and he's possibly a Keldor's.
Keldor. Oh yeah, Keldor, like Plo Koon.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Gosla Fular, who's a Mon Calamari.
Nice.
And a bunch of other near humans.
There's one of the pictures you showed me, and he looked like the little guy from Force Awakens that was trying to poach BB-8 off of Rey in the desert.
Or the guy that got wounded in the fight with the guy that died in the jetpack incident.
Yes. I wonder if it's.
You get a name for him?
I do have a name. Gapgrin Dozito.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, he could have been, you know, one of those guys.
Yeah, I didn't. I know I've seen him before.
Is there a race for him?
I didn't get a race for him.
Interesting.
Okay, cool.
But I know he looked familiar, but I couldn't find him.
Yeah.
But now that you say that, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that episode.
Yeah.
I found that line that she says her stripes mean there are rules.
That's right. So she basically alludes, what do you need him for? And he's like, I need him to help me track down Moff Gideon's cruiser. And she's reluctant to help, you know, because there are rules, but she does look him up. She doesn't really say, you know, what exactly her involvement's going to be, but I have to, you know, wonder, is she going to, one, like, this is where he is, you're on your own to go get him? Or do you think she's going to saddle up and go with him to break him out?
She saddled
up. She goes with him.
You think so?
There's a tonal shift there.
They have the kid.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They have the kid.
And her changes instantly.
Her
expression changes, her countenance, everything about her. Yeah. Actually, it's a brilliant little piece of acting. You're right, Andy. She changes immediately.
Yeah. Up until that line, she's like, you know, towing the line. It's like, yeah, I'll give you the info, but I'm not doing nothing.
Yeah.
Well, she's even sitting back in her chair. She's relaxed, and she tenses up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's a hell of an actress, actually.
Very much so. So from that, the scene ends, and we get an upwards wipe to Moff Gideon aboard his cruiser in hyperspace. And
we missed a spot because another spot where I went, oh no,
right,
was when the craft leapt to hyperspace.
Oh, that's right. They just
because as soon as the death or the Dark Troopers are on board.
That's right. Gone
right from the atmosphere.
Yeah,
and, that was my third oh no of the episode. Really, I went. Well, that makes it really difficult to track. You can't track through hyperspace yet.
If the sequels did anything, we've talked about this before, whether you like it or not, they've changed the way that, entering hyperspace works, and that now it's fully acceptable that we can immediately go to hyperspace, within a planet's atmosphere, which to me was kind of foreign for a while, but I've come to accept it now.
One of the things about the Charles Soule novel, the High Republic novel, talks about the instability of hyperspace lanes and how crazy dangerous it is.
Well, they talk about this.
The newer they are, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
And even all you're taking your life in your hands every time you jump to hyperspace 200 years before the Battle of Yavin. And the novel opens up with the great disaster. It's essentially a ship full of civilians, like 90,000 civilians, hits an object in hyperspace.
Oh, wow.
I'll send you the link to it's online. It's the first 8 chapters. It's actually really good. They get into a little bit of the dangers of hyperspace, and you there's almost a casualness, like you're playing chess in hyperspace now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But Han Solo alludes to that with his line to Luke, right? Like, hey, jumping through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, and then goes into like why it's essential to have like precise coordinates. But that leads back to where I'm going to go back to the role-playing game for a minute here, because that's our first real major breakdown of hyperspace and how it might work in a space fantasy setting. And that we look at the time of Knights of the Old Republic, that 3,000 years before the films, where they had hyperspace travel back then as well. But look at me say back then like it's a historical thing. A longer time ago in a galaxy farther away.
Yeah. Still this universe, though.
That's right. So within the Star Wars, if we talk about the stuff that we're watching now as like the modern Star Wars universe, you have these hyperspace computers that are capable of storing multiple, hyperspace jumps and making complex calculations. Like
literally what an astromech droid is for.
Exactly. But in the Knights of the Old Republic, in that era, in that 3,000 years before, the hyperspace computers did not work that way, and the hyperlanes were not established. So they used to use what they called these hyperspace buoys. And so they would put these basically navigation beacons out in space, and you would make your jumps based off of those from beacon to beacon. But the problem with those is, unlike a Navicomputer, which is basically linked up to the Star Wars version of the internet and is continually downloading the most updated navigation information, navigational buoys were a physical object in space that did not account for like spatial drift, and that's why it was so much more dangerous to travel in hyperspace back then. So I kind of wonder if, new canon will embrace some of that. Who knows?
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
Well, that scene in The Last Jedi, he immediately recognizes the danger when she flips the ship around.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, that was a fantastic scene.
It was. So we're now back on board Gideon's cruiser. There's this whole sequence of him, like, to me it's good because it plays up the dramatic tension, but it's a bit of a throwaway with him just kind of walking around the ship.
Yeah.
Really, I don't really think there's anything else going on there except, building that tension to getting to the reveal where, Grogu is in fact a prisoner. But cool little lead up to it though, as he's walking down the hall, and we can hear the voices from behind the door and right. And then the door blows open, and then there's like stormtroopers get it. And I wrote, ragdoll troopers are getting flinged around.
Just like the physics in the Starkiller games too.
Yes, totally.
Like with the one guy being dangled by his leg.
Yeah.
They had that. It was very new AI at the time that game came out.
They called it ragdoll physics in those games.
The AI would learn, and so if you killed a bunch of stormtroopers the exact same way, they would start like grabbing onto railings and try to, like, I'd lift one with the force and another one would grab his leg and try to pull him down. Like, you could get a chain of stormtroopers floating. You could do really cool things in that game because the AI was very astute. I got a huge vibe of that as he was ragdolling them around.
Oh yeah, even like you say, like that image of the trooper that Boba had smashed the helmet, the way he was laying there on the ground, all sort of akimbo. Was kind of evocative of like dangling a trooper by his toes, right?
Oh, certainly.
But there's this like moment where Gideon comes in and he's flanked by his escort of a couple of more troopers. And those two troopers, the one guy, he wants to get in, like he's going to go into a system, and Gideon holds him back.
Yeah.
You know, like he wants to see what's going on. And
you need armed troopers on your own ship.
You know what? But, again, so we can go into this because I want to touch on this a little bit more about sort of our thoughts on Gideon and how he plays into things. Gideon stops the trooper in favor of watching it play out. And then, of course, Grogu finally, between a little bit of a force choke on the one guy and then just smashing them together, is left.
Taking a knee.
Yeah, he's visibly like, oh, I can't do it anymore. Kind of like after his communion on the big force radio tower, he needs a little nap. But I actually had a moment. So I forgot to bring this up because I meant to. I had a moment earlier in the episode when the Dark Troopers landed where Grogu pops up awake and he looks over, and for a second I thought he was going to defend himself.
Yeah.
And it never happened. So
he kind of starts to put his hand up.
Yeah, like his ears, to me, he kind of perks up like, uh-oh. Like he knew there was an inherent danger to what was happening. But we get a bit of a payoff here with him ragdolling these two guys around.
Oh, certainly. Kind of force choking the one a little.
You did, yeah. So he force chokes the guy, knocks them out. And at this point, he's kind of like he's tapped. He can't do it anymore. But it doesn't stop him from trying as Gideon approaches him and basically, and I don't know, does anybody know why? Like, do we have like a reason? What reason does Gideon have to brandish the Darksaber in front of him?
Foreshadowing. I believe it's
foreshadowing.
So the whole scene goes basically, you're getting better at doing that.
Oh yes, you've gotten quite adept at that.
It makes you so sleepy. He's talking down to him at the same, like he's got this grandfatherly tone, but he's very condescending.
Oh my gosh,
super smarmy. He's like, but it makes you so sleepy. It's almost like a Disney villain, literally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And have you ever seen one of these? And he ignites the Darksaber from times gone past, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
And he reaches out to either take it or touch it.
They use that sound effect though, where he's trying to reach out with the Force.
Yes.
But he's just, and that's when Gideon pulls it back. Oh no.
Yeah. But he says something very telling here, and I think
he does.
This may be very foreboding for Grogu's future, and maybe super cool when he's an adult.
Yeah.
You could put an eye out with that.
Before he says that,
you're not ready for this.
Yes,
yet.
You're not ready for this. So this is where I want to go. I want to swing back around to Gideon specifically and our theory on, is Gideon a Force user?
Maybe.
You say, why does he need an escort on his own ship? And the counterpoint to that is, well, he's, walking into a cell with a Force user.
Sure.
But another Force user who's potentially more powerful, or at least way more trained, probably wouldn't need that escort.
Probably not.
Do we think, I'm still, my suspicion meter is still kind of, the needle is bouncing on whether I think he's an Inquisitor or not. And I'm still, there's a part of me that still says, I think he still may be a Force user.
Huge part of me wants it. I don't know if it's required. We like to assume that maybe Sabine is a little bit Force sensitive.
Maybe
she can tune in with the blade.
Yeah.
But perhaps it's the blade that's tuning in with the user.
That's entirely possible as well.
I think that the super telling part of that is this foreshadowing of an eye missing on the character due to a lightsaber strike. Whether he's foreshadowing his own eye getting taken at some point, or whether we're gonna have a patch on the kid to even make him look more like a Mandalorian, something super cool, like wound that he carries through life. I'm not sure.
Superficially, I wonder. We talked about in the last episode, or Ahsoka had mentioned that he spent time in the Jedi Temple and was trained by several Jedi. So on one level, when Gideon says, "Have you seen one of these?" I'm like, is he making a direct reference to Jedi training?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's quite possible.
Are you old enough to you've had your initial lightsaber training with a master?
Quite possible.
So I'm like,
does Gideon want to take him to the dark side?
Right. That's the other thing. And that line of dialogue of, "You're not ready for one of these yet." Is Gideon going to try to turn Grogu? Is Gideon making a power play for himself and is going to, use the child to his own nefarious purposes?
It's very possible.
I don't know.
While we're on the sort of the page of speculating whether Gideon may be force sensitive, I feel the need to dip back into the last episode for just a brief second.
Of course.
And I sent you guys I think I sent both of you, and if I didn't, forgive me, but I came across a tweet from a hairstylist on The Mandalorian.
Oh, yes.
She was the hairstylist.
It's since gone pretty viral.
It's it disappeared. It was removed, in fact, too.
Yeah.
And it points to the fact that Morgan Elsbeth is the last survivor, or one of the last survivors of Dathomir. And a friend of mine had said, "Do you think she could be a Force Witch?" And I think this was even before that. He just threw it out there, and I was like, no. Force Witches aren't human. But that seems almost empirical to me, and makes a lot more sense why she's able to disarm Ahsoka's one weapon, and another reason that she may be left alive in that confrontation. But I know we didn't talk about it because we didn't have the information before, and we were speculating. I was speculated that her burgundy robes lent themselves to being Mando's people.
Yep.
But I now believe that the burgundy, the dark reds, and this, I believe that she's a Night Sister, bro.
She could be a Night Sister, but if you look up the Night Sisters, even they within Dathomiri culture are an offshoot of like the rest of the planet. They talk about
there's a couple kinds.
Yeah, like there being like tribes of
That's right.
And maybe not all, like the Night Sisters may just be one particular tribe or sect.
Certainly they're portrayed differently in the Dathomir novels.
Yeah.
From the EU, where
birthplace of the Rancor.
Where Luke, and they ride Rancors and cool stuff like that. But I felt the need to bring that up because we didn't have a chance to touch on it last episode.
Well, it's super duper pertinent to sort of where I want to go with my speculations. So I'm actually glad you brought that up.
Perfect.
One more touch on that question as to why a Force user would need 2 armed guards.
Yeah.
They're always doing it. Emperor Palpatine, Supreme Leader Snoke, they're always flanked by some sort of guard.
It's in vogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even as far back as Palpatine, or Supreme Chancellor Valorum and the Senate Guard and their evolution into the Imperial Guard. You're totally right.
Yeah, they always got a regiment of somebody
more callbacky goodness, I guess. Yeah, so Grogu exhaustingly tries to reach out with the Force to rend the saber from Gideon's grasp, but is too weak to do so. Gideon motions to his escort, and a trooper moves forward and stuns Grogu. Gideon says, "Put him in shackles," and then talks about, as soon as we drop out of hyperspace, send an encrypted message to Dr. Pershing. Tell him we've got our volunteer. We've got our donor. Which is a direct callback to, what we'd seen before about needing more genetic material, more blood.
More blood.
So then our last scene is tiny little Grogu with his electro binders, I guess, laying there.
They remind me of the binders that Obi-Wan has put in by Dooku.
Yeah, very much so.
And so I'm wondering if they're force
suppressing. Yeah.
Yeah.
As he's laying there in his cell unconscious.
Forlorn. So sad. I'm just, as they pan away from him before we snap to black.
Yeah.
My fourth, oh no.
Yeah. And then we get our credits roll and the episode is over. So, big heavy duty episode. We've really kind of, I think we've hit on a bunch of our speculative parts in the appropriate sections, but I have a few things that I kind of want to leave on. First off, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say that Grogu absolutely contacted someone. Not going to say who it is definitively, but I'm going to theorize a couple of things. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying before. Like, I honestly thought that, this was going to be a great opportunity to like put the Rebels cast back together. But from what we've seen in this episode, like, I'm leaning away from that now because we already have I should say props to us for saying that Mando was going to put a crew together. We knew that was going to happen, but there was going to be some kind of rescue. Like if we're going to lose the child, then there's going to be a big dramatic scene where there's going to have to be a rescue. I just thought it'd be a great way to get the band back together. Mm-hmm. I did not in any way predict that Mayfeld would be part of that. And because we've gone that way, I'm like, okay, so we've got Boba and Fennec who are now in debt to Din. So it's going to be the three of them plus Mayfeld and Cara Dune. I don't know if anybody else is going to tack on, whether we get Grief Karga back or even somebody else.
I'll stop along the way and pick up Ahsoka.
Well, I don't want to go that far because I think that's going to take away from the dramatic, what I feel for the last episode is going to be the dramatic conclusion or the finale, right?
I feel like Mayfield's just a key.
Sure.
I think it would be very minor.
You don't think he'll be part of the rescue?
I don't think he's part of the rescue crew. I think you might even get him. He might even die. Maybe they'll give him a little sacrificey thing.
Oh, absolutely!
To redeem his character. But I think that he's literally the keeper of the information they need just to get through the door. He's literally a key, and I don't think that they'll harp on him very much.
Yeah.
We got 2 episodes to go. We got under 2 hours ostensibly to wrap this thing up in a nice, pretty bow. And we know that also with the wrap up, they're going to dangle another participle and leave us with a cliffhanger for the next season.
Yeah. So
whether that's a failed attempt at a rescue or whether it's a successful rescue with grave consequences.
Yep.
But we're coming to that that Mexican standoff appears to have many, many more prongs than we thought.
Sure does.
And I even think that down the road they may have set up something subtle. They may have set up, while they're working together right now, they may have set up some sort of head-to-head, if you will, between the Super Commando Team Fett and the Vizsla Death Watch camp that Din Djarin appears to be been adopted into. And those are the progenitors of the original civil wars on Mandalore. So I thought maybe there's some ideological differences that may hack out. Like, they're working together now, but, let's kill the prisoner. Well, let's not. And so there's going to be certainly different and very diametrically opposed ideologies from those two characters. I think we'll see some of that.
We've talked about the show. I mean, it's called The Mandalorian for a reason. He's got to be central to anything that we do. And having Bo-Katan wanting the Darksaber, knowing that the Empire controls Mandalore, it seems like it would just be a fitting conclusion in the long run to have Mandalore liberated, and maybe Din does. Maybe the what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe the conclusion of his story is he sits atop of whatever government as Mandalore. You know what I mean? Maybe.
Yeah, no, that I think I mentioned sort of that earlier on, and so it was almost tongue in cheek when I was like, because you had said the Mandalore.
Oh yeah.
Almost by accident. I was like, he could be.
Yeah.
and so no, I don't discount that at all. In a very much Game of Thrones style sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
When all the dust falls, he may be the last guy standing.
Yeah. Certainly I agree with you when it comes to coming back around to the rescue idea. I actually wrote that I think it's going to go very bad.
Very bad.
It's going to go bad, and to the point where I think somebody will die. And like you say, if anyone's going to die, Mayfeld is a great choice, right? It's
a perfect person to insert sort of into the narrative to actually kill a character.
Right.
I don't know if they'll kill anybody bigger than the Crest.
Well, that's a tough one. It's a hard one to beat without killing off a living, breathing character.
This is it. The biggest stakes are the child.
They absolutely
lowest stakes are now Mayfield, and certainly it's somewhere in between there. But you're going to see a character death.
Yes, absolutely we are. I think the rescue is going to go bad, and the cliffhanger ending will be a Jedi will show up to turn the tide, and we'll get the reveal of who that person is, but we won't get the resolution of did we get the child back or not. That's the springboard for the next season.
That'll be oh my God, this just happened and we're waiting now.
Yeah. So
my heart wants Ezra Bridger.
Well, and that's where I was.
But my gut is telling me Cal Kestis.
So that's where I want to sort of I want to change my opinion because I was so in the I want Ezra so bad, so bad. And I thought it was a given because of the line of dialogue about where's your master, where is Grand Admiral Thrawn. And
there's a thing lately that just changed that for me.
The super nuts that we are reading everything we can possibly devour came up with that Vanity Fair article.
That's the thing that changed it for me. The Filoni interview with Vanity Fair.
When you come up with this article where he made a point to say that, well, Star Wars isn't necessarily linear, and he's like, the prequels came before the original or came after the original trilogy, so who knows? And it totally ties back into that. We talked about the difference between the sketch, the Ahsoka the White. And in the Jedi episode, she in fact was wearing a gray cloak, further solidifying that analogy that Ahsoka is Gandalf. So we ostensibly just watched Ahsoka the Grey duke it out with Morgan Elsbeth, and that episode predates the epilogue of the final episode of Star Wars Rebels.
It's certainly what he suggests.
It firmly plants the idea that Ahsoka is almost for sure to get a spinoff of her own, and that may be what they explore in that.
Yeah, and it completely eliminates Ezra from the last two episodes. It really does. Because we're at least a couple of years before that now.
Yep.
And the end game, the crux, if you guys haven't seen it, and shame on you. If you guys haven't seen the epilogue to Rebels.
Yeah.
It's about Sabine and Ahsoka going off to find Ezra. So we're not going to find Ezra in a timeline that occurs before that scene.
Yeah.
And we are rooted in that timeline right now.
That's right.
So Cal Kestis is the sort of the next major player, especially with the success of the video game, with the success of them, the new trend of having the actor look exactly like the video game character, not just voice acting anymore, but living, breathing, sort of as if it were a movie. That actor's
Cameron
Monaghan.
Yeah.
Is in the prime of his career. I've seen a lot of glam shots of him lately with the little goatee and stuff. He's looking svelte. He's looking, he could step right into the role of an older Cal Kestis. Not a problem. They've talked about the Fallen Order games now having been so successful that it's going to be a trilogy of games. There's that Nice Sister reference turning in that, which and there's the Fallen Jedi, the Quixotic Jedi from the games. It opens up a whole other world that is so separate from the Rebels story that lets that go into that Ahsoka side stories and lets them continue with something that's still deep Star Wars, but and satisfying as hell.
Yep.
But lets them do two things at once.
We can spin off Ahsoka into her own show. Filoni can be the showrunner on that, much like Favreau is for Mandalorian, and we can still have a plethora of guest directors, and we can run a tight, super tight show like we did with Mandalorian. But specifically where Cal Kestis is concerned, here's my rationale for wanting to shift my opinion more towards him, who I really do think is my front runner for who's going to show up. I don't think it's going to be Luke Skywalker. Could be Cira Junda, Cal's traveling companion throughout the game. They're both alive at the end of it, but it makes more sense narratively speaking for it to be Cal. And we talked about this sort of offline over the last few days, and we touched on it in our last show, actually. We've never really we don't think there's been another visual reference of another Force user using a Seeing Stone, but there's this mechanic within the game where they have what are referred to as meditation stones.
Mm-hmm.
And these meditation stones, from a narrative purpose, like when Ahsoka told Din Djarin to place him on the Seeing Stone and he would reach out through the Force and, he would either reconnect or he wouldn't. Narratively speaking, these Seeing Stones, not only do they serve as your save points within the game, but at certain narrative moments within the story, they serve a higher purpose in the sense that much like Grogu, Cal Kestis, as we'd said before, was a survivor of Order 66, and he too suppressed his Force abilities to survive.
Absolutely.
And through the use of these meditation points, he begins to reopen himself to the Force, and he starts having these memories, and then narratively speaking, that restores his Force powers, per se.
It's literally an interface to his abilities.
Yep, absolutely. So if we look at these meditation points or these meditation stones as maybe lesser versions of the big seeing stones, here we have a
similar effect.
Yeah. We have an established character who's already familiar with the interface, as you say. He's familiar with how that works. He's used a similar device to reopen himself. It only makes sense that he would be the one to receive the message because he's so intimately familiar with how that works on some level.
So when you sit down into those meditations in that game and you go to that screen where your abilities are all laid out for you, it looks very much like Rebels, The World Beyond Worlds.
Oh, it does, yeah.
And so that's what I think that's where they go when you meditate in your mind's eye. And you also get that column of blue energy around him.
Yeah.
And you get the sort of spiraling runes. They're inconclusive. They're not legible and stuff, but it's a very similar effect to what you get with Grogu. And so, yeah, I feel strongly that all those little things add up to it making a lot of sense. And I think there might have even been talk of him just mentioning his character recently in an article, in an interview, an article. I'd have to look it up again, but I remember reading something a couple months back about whether he was talking about the next game coming out or the chance to play Cal Kestis again. I recall something about that. So,
if you've never played Jedi Fallen Order and you're not familiar, if you're not familiar with the actor, we were watching. Believe it or not, it's back on Netflix again. It's a hilarious show. Son of Zorn.
I love Son of Zorn.
So Cameron Monaghan plays one of the kids at school with Alan in the episode where they go out with the lava gun.
Yes.
So he plays sort of the ringleader of that little group. Yeah. So that's Cameron Monaghan.
He always plays like a kind of bully. It was nice to see him play a hero.
Yeah.
He's the ad hoc Joker from Gotham.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as much as because of my love for Rebels and how much I would just love it to be Ezra, because his story is incomplete. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that is a story for another time in a spin-off show, and Cal Kestis is officially my front runner for who will show up and dramatically, turn the tide of battle.
The other thing too is I think the last scene of this season will be exactly what you say, is we'll get our Jedi arriving, but what we're going to get is our Jedi arriving on Tython.
Maybe
nothing else makes sense.
Maybe
he's going to arrive on Tython after the events, maybe shortly after the events of what just happened now.
Possibly smoking wreckage, on the ground from the two landers.
He's going to have to sort of
track them down.
Maybe. But I like the idea of keeping that Rebels story separate and being able to twist these two things together.
Yep.
And give me 2 of these. Give me 5. Give me 10 of these shows.
For sure.
I'll watch a Fennec Shan show.
Yeah. At this point, I'm all.
I will do whatever you say, Mickey Mouse.
Yes, that's right. So one more thing I want to touch on, and this goes back to, if we could circle back around to Jango and his lineage and how that relates to the loss of the crest. And so I said earlier that, the ship is a main character, and, it's his best friend, and he needs a new best friend. So outside of the Star Trek solution where we just get a new one, I had said before, and I'm going to go out, and this is completely out on a limb here. I'm going to theorize that he's going to get a new ship. I don't know where he's going to get it from. Maybe he'll get it from Grief. Maybe he'll get it from somewhere else. But I really think visually he should get a ship that is going to be evocative of the Legends ship Jaster's Legacy.
I was so on board with you last night after I'd translated that that Mandoa, when I found Jaster's name. I was like, yes, you were 100% correct. And then I actually shot myself in the foot because I went back and I took a deep look at Jaster's legacy.
Yep.
And to me, the crest is modeled off that already.
I think so too. I've said that right from the beginning, but I don't see
it's
why.
So similar that but they might just jump the shark and go with a straight Jaster's legacy.
Sure.
Which is or even a new crest with the coloring of Jaster's.
Yeah, maybe. The orange. Yeah. But again, like I said, if you've never seen it before, look it up because it's a pretty cool design. It looks like what is it? The flying goose or whatever it was, the historical seaplane.
Yes, yeah. The spruce moose.
Spruce goose. The spruce goose. The spruce moose.
Yeah, that's from the Simpsons episode. I said get in.
It's hilarious. But he absolutely needs a new ship, and I'm excited to see where that's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I just had this thought. In order to seal, I'm trying to say how Boba Fett was dead before this.
That's right.
High stakes death could be Boba Fett. Could give Mando his new ship. Yeah. Could be a very, very satisfying version of that for us because we all want to see Mando in the Slave One, and that's a high stakes death that we could be okay with.
Well, let's remember that
because he's been dead for 40 years in our hearts anyway.
That's right.
Right? It's not, the stakes aren't that high, but they're very high now that and it would be a very dramatic thing to do, give him back to us just to take him away.
We all accept that this show is a spiritual passing of the torch per se. But what if it's a literal passing of the torch and Din Djarin becomes Boba Fett because the legend is bigger than the man?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, that's a great take.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've taken to when Lauren and I talk back and forth and she's saying Din and I'm saying Mando and I'm like, well, if you take the helmet off him, he's Din Djarin, but until that happens, he's Mando. He's Spider-Man. When he takes the mask off, then he's Peter Parker.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
I'll keep calling him the Mando as long as he's got that thing on.
Yeah. It's a show that keeps us guessing anyway, that's for sure.
Oh,
Andy, you got any speculative points you want to make?
Well, maybe they'll throw a big curveball to everyone and it'll be Mace Windu showing up on Tython.
There it is. There's a lot of fan hype about that.
There really is. And I mean, even Sam Jackson has expressed interest in playing that character again. So it's definitely a fantastic opportunity. And maybe even a better talk about high stakes death, right? What if Sam Jackson comes back and, he helps in some way, shape, or form, but is, mortally wounded and we get some, closure with him. I don't know. Hard to say.
I'm not sure what could more mortally wound him
than the Emperor.
Single combat with the Emperor, but we could raise the stakes.
And it wouldn't be the first.
2 Great Dragons.
2 Great Dragons, yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time that he's shown up on set for like 12 minutes of a scene just to
be there.
Do that little end snippet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so true.
He knows how to keep a secret.
Yeah. That's true, yeah. What about you, Hank? You got any more speculation you want to toss out?
Best episode ever is all I can say.
Yeah.
It keeps happening.
I know.
Does this roller coaster not go down?
shortest episode of the season. And let me just do this here one more time. Let's go. I'm going to count this here now. 2, 4, 6. Oh, only 8 pages of notes today.
Nice. Finally seeing Boba Fett in action the way that we've always imagined him in action.
That's right.
Bordered on orgasmic.
Yeah. Star Wars porn.
Yeah.
I loved the episode. I loved, despite my little misgivings about the whole distance travel time thing with the hill and, the comm channel thing, which are really just so like minor nitpicks, like narratively as it supports the bigger story. Love this episode.
Love it.
Love it. If you're just coming to our show now, you really do owe it to yourself to go back and make sure you're up to date on everything that is Mandalorian, because it is some of the best Star Wars ever. Yeah, ever. We've got 2 episodes left to the end of the season. Still no word if there's going to be a Christmas break. I'm really hoping that there's not.
There is.
There's been no mention of that. Haven't seen any more in terms of toy hype spoilering anything, so that seems to be locked up pretty tight, although I would suspect pretty soon we're going to see some new characters.
I sent you those images last week of the new pre-order releases for, I think it was Quill.
Yeah, you did. Quill.
Gideon.
Yep.
And somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Those are good. I'm looking forward to some of those characters.
Oh, it's Greed Karga.
Yes, because you gotta have your crew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's it. We got 2 episodes left, and it's a done deal for the season, and then we're gonna have to wait, another year?
Yeah. Apparently they've already began filming in November. They began filming season 3.
Okay, that's great. Good to know.
Yeah, it's good news.
So with that being said, just a quick question for you guys as co-hosts. Is there any merits in coming together for a 9th episode where we do a season recap? Talking about, and I don't mean it as a
I'm not going to be doing anything else.
I don't mean it as a beat for beat recap like we do on the weeklies, but maybe we can pick out some highlights like highs and lows of what we loved and talk maybe more. I'm
certain that after the last episode, it's going to paint the previous episode. You know how everyone informs the last one?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's going to be a bigger picture to talk about.
Great.
So I certainly, I would love to keep it rolling.
For sure.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Man.
So for those of you who are listening, if that's something that you guys would be interested in, we'd love to hear that feedback and maybe sort of have that conversation steered a little bit more towards your likings, because left to our own devices, it's as you can tell, we are very much for the long form storytelling, and we do have a bit of a gift to gab. So if you let us go, we will go.
Certainly. I'd give a shout out to possibly our biggest fan out there, Doug Illingworth. You are the man. He's listened to every second that we've recorded, and I don't even think I've done that.
Well, I'm so happy to know that there is at least one person. And I said when we started doing this, I said if one person likes what we're doing, then I am over the moon that we're reaching an audience.
Yeah, I get to interact with him daily, just through text and stuff, and he was the most casual. Like, he'd seen the movies and he was a bit of a fan and he knew the pop culture references, but we've created a monster.
That's great.
And he's gone back and he's just marathoning all this stuff with a new lens, and honestly, the if you could reach one person, well, we reached a guy, so we've done our diligence here, and that's such a cool thing to think.
Yeah. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that offline, but there's definitely lots more ideas coming down the pipe, and once the season of Mandalorian wraps up, that's not the end of Fandom Power Presents the Fandalorian, because we'll be back as long as they continue to make series and some extra surprises along the way. Woo. But that's it for me, guys. Good recording this week, and look forward to getting the episode up later today.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen. Until next week, may the Force be with you.
And also with you.
And this is the way.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.